and then we'll go to Victor, and then Jeffrey Powers.
Good morning from Washington, D.C. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have not changed anything. Check 1, 2. Let me come down a little bit, a little touch. Check 1, 2. Looks like I'm right. Almost there.
I
Check
think
one,
where you
two, three,
started
four.
was pretty good. Where
Yeah.
you started was pretty good.
Check
But yeah,
one,
we'll
two. Check 1, 2, 3, 4. So I took it back up. Check 1, 2, 3,
right.
4, 5, 6.
I think we're about there. Steve Cotton, and then Victor.
Hello, test 1 2 3 4. This is a test of the emergency broadcast network. Please do not call the radio station. Test one
Alrighty,
two three
that's a
four.
good check. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Victor, and then Jeffrey Powers. Muted, Victor. Zoom mute.
Okay. Am I okay now?
Checking, checking. Yeah, I'm not hearing myself back.
Very
Cool.
interesting. If I turn on original sound, the loopback gets created. So I'm going to have to work on that.
I think I know what's going on there. Let's talk separately about that. I had the same thing with Fenwick a few days ago. Jeffrey Powers.
All right, had to recreate my chain. Everything should be a little bit better. I remember doing the time warp, fleeting those moments when the magic would hit me and a voice would be calling. I'm at about 21 again.
Just a tiny bump up, and you should be good. All right, cool.
Tiny
Thank you,
bump
guys.
up, we're good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All good?
Mickey, just to
Yes,
let you
sir.
know, I'm not on original sound. There's a lot of fan noise here tonight.
Yeah, it's fine.
Copy that. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching and you're wondering how you get into this conversation, you can join the Zoom link and actually be part of the conversation. If you are here as an attendee and you're looking at all these panelists and wondering how they all became panelists, they got here early. They had good internet. They had good video. They had good audio. So that's what you need to be here. And you need to get here early. 6:40 Pacific Standard Time is when you should be here if you want to be part of the actual panel. We open the doors at 6 o'clock and we talk about all kinds of things. Today we were troubleshooting some video, but we were also talking about house moving and gas explosions. So we can't promise anything before 6:40. So anyway, 6:40 we start the mic checks. You heard a little bit of the end of those mic checks in the stream. Once we start the mic checks, the panel is full. This is the one exception is for education on Saturdays, where we'll have some of the teachers drop in at 7:55. So anyway, but most of the time we have mic checks, and that's when we close things up. So once you see us doing those mic checks, don't raise your digital hand. We're not gonna have you today, but you come back tomorrow, and it'll be great. So if you are an attendee, there's still some pressure. Like you can't just sit there and just listen. You need to think about things that you're trying to figure out in media production, in virtual production. What is stopping you? What, even just something that's tickling your brain that you just can't quite figure out. This is the place to ask, and you really drive this conversation. What you ask and what you vote on in Mukana, which is if you're new to this, if you go down to the chat, you'll see links that'll take you out to Mukana. But what you ask and what you vote on drives the entire conversation here. This is really your show. So take that into account. If you think that this is a good thing and you want to share it with other people, go ahead and use the link that I'm going to put into Mukana right now. Don't use your own, otherwise lots of people will come in as you, and we want you, just one of you. so anyway, use that link and go from there. And let's go to the first question.
Well, Alex, it's going to be an interesting morning because the first 12, that is the first entire dozen questions, are about the Dolby Summit and your show. And I know you can only talk so much about it.
I need to get some approvals before I get into those pieces. So I know that we probably have a whole slew of questions that I can't answer right now. Mostly what I want to ask folks, what did you think of it overall, I guess? Yeah, good. Yeah. So, was anybody watching the, go ahead, Sky.
I shared yesterday, I only had the typical Sony headset on, but it felt like the audio was in 360. It was kind of mystical.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
I purposely watched it on the lowest res, smallest device I have, which is about a 9-year-old iPad, I think iPad Mini 4, and I was astonished at how clear it sounded and how good it looked on an old legacy device as opposed to something with all the new bells and whistles. So however the mono simple fold down happened, it really worked well.
Yep. George?
I think watching it on the iPhone with the AirPods were pretty good. I wanted to really experience it on a small device versus a home system. So I think that's going to be interesting moving forward over the years to see how that gets developed, so, on on mobile devices.
It's one of the reasons that I'm really excited about it right now. I think that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Vision and Atmos over the next couple months. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is the opportunity right now to get good at this. Is there's an opportunity to be in the front end of that wave. There's going to be a big wave, and because of the AirPod Pros and because of Vision on the phone, there's going to be a huge interest in Vision and Atmos. And there's an opportunity for us as a group. We probably have the best opportunity to get really good at this as a group. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in hiring people that know how to do this, and most people don't. It's hard. So it's, I think that I'm definitely very excited about having you bringing up as many people as possible for my own selfish reasons that I may need a lot of people that know how to do it. So anyway, it's so we're going to be doing a lot of training around it, around all the tools that are used to build it, around the process, understanding the stuff. So it'd be good. Alex, I'm going to let you jump in here. I don't know how long you're going to be here because it looks like you're getting ready to go out.
Yes, no, at least an hour or something like that.
Okay.
And thanks to my wonderful makeup artist here for my previous work. About the stream, I was on the app on my iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max, and I really like how the stream didn't feel like a normal stream. I like how it actually just stopped and I could just hear the audio when the bandwidth was low. I actually like that choice. It didn't feel like I was on a web browser. I thought the streaming worked really well on the app. And just using really cheap headphones and stuff like that. But just the color on my phone and the contrast was really good. So I really liked it. But even, as I said, even when the bandwidth was low, I like how the app handled it.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's great. And Jeffrey?
So during office hours, I was basically doing a whole bunch of head movements because I had the AirPods Pro in and watching off of my iPhone 10. And because that was one of the things that I started noticing is as you moved your head, the audio stayed in its directional area, which was great. And then I walked away from my phone, and because I can't remember who that was, told me it was because of the fact that it's using the sensors in the AirPods Pro with the iPhone to figure out where I am and how the sound is going from there. With that said, really quick, I'm just gonna, so if this is my iPhone, I noticed the sound was a little bit over here and it just kept moving back and forth. I don't know if it was because of the fact of my AirPods were not tuned right, which is why I asked
always
that
feel
question.
I do feel like my AirPods, looking at these things, I feel like my AirPods are a little off center. Like they're always a little to the left for me. Like the center of mass in the AirPod Pro is a little to the left, like by about 15 degrees. And I can't quite figure out what that is, but it definitely I agree with you that I've noticed that in the last couple of weeks because I've been doing a lot of testing. And
which is why I asked for a tuning app, if there was a tuning app for the creator and for the listener, because that would probably help.
Well, I don't think it's that, but it doesn't sound like that in a full Atmos system. I had the opportunity to watch the keynote in with discrete 10 discrete speakers, so it didn't sound it sounded pretty centered there. I think it's something in the AirPod Pros. Lucas?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that I was very impressed with the downfolds, and I tried a few different devices, headphones, and a simple stereo setup, and it was the resolution even on this simple stereo setup was astonishing. I haven't heard that in a live stream before, so that was quite impressive. Even though I had these audio latency issues, but still, the
great.
audio was quite.
Yeah, no, it really does feel like the future. It was. I mean, again, I feel like this one was a 320 by 240 version of the future. Like there's a lot to get done and figure out. But I think that we just saw something that is people will be doing. Everyone will be doing it in a year. Like everyone's going to be doing this in a year. in my opinion. I mean, because it's so every grown-up company will be doing it in a year. like there'll be people messing around, but it's going to be a much different thing. Go ahead, Stuart, and then George.
I'm lucky enough to be looking at a laptop that's got the X-Rite Pantone sensor built in, so I can adjust the colors on the screen properly. And watching the keynote and seeing how all the colors jumped out was absolutely fabulous. This laptop, being PC based, obviously doesn't have all the Apple advantage at the moment, but does have Dolby drivers for sound. So I'm wondering, is there a roadmap that Dolby might have released somewhere for updating drivers of hardware that might support the Atmos sound? And an observation, being able to do one color grade for HDR and have Dolby take care of the rest is going to save so much money in post on so many projects. It's going to be a fabulous time saver as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The Atmos first, vision first approach is really going to be the way to do this. Go ahead, George.
So congrats, Alex, on the entire project. It was awesome to see you deploy all the kits that we always talk about. So that was a little bit of in my head. I was like, man, countryman. It was good to see you deploy all the arsenal on this one.
Yeah, it was a big lift. those brios were the ones that came from South Africa. So Hosmuk supplied. So anyway, it's. I think it really speaks to how much you can get out of Zoom. I mean, the quality of Zoom can be very high. That's all. I mean, it's if people have good bandwidth and they've got a good camera, and it can definitely step up. It's just that most people don't do it. We're talking to a client right now about switching their system over to point because, when you look at point to point, now it'd be nice. I mean, I'd probably be more like, hey, let's do it inside of Zoom, except for the fact that I can't control the audio as well. Like when you have a problem in the middle of a show, you want to be able to cut away and handle it and process it and talk to folks. And we can't back channel. But the other thing is my webinar doesn't have 1080p. Not that I'm bitter, but it's driving us pretty hard away from Zoom as a platform for streaming, because I can't use Zoom internally. I mean, because I don't have 1080p in the webinar. So anyway, it's just saying. Not that I haven't requested it. Anyway, who's next? Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I also really liked how the live Q&A matched with the graded video that was prepared in advance. So for the technical, firstly, the actual content of them talking about real detail in terms of the sports sound and how they actually did it all and who they asked to do it was actually real content. It really felt like a WWDC type, Apple type developer thing, even though it wasn't for developers, it was for content creators. But I really liked how well the live call-ins matched so well with what you'd actually just shown before, so it really it just followed on directly. So I thought that was really good.
And I think that also shows you how far you can take a webcam. Like if you look at the live fold-ins at the end of some of those, you can really get a webcam to look really good. It's just a matter of having the right bandwidth and everything else, and then being able to, what you need is a proc amp at the other end. So FS. One of the AJFS, HDRs or FS4s, whatever, so that you can tune it. We do that on other shows where all the Zoom go into an FS4. We've got a stack of FS4s, so there's a FS4 throughput for everybody. So we can literally tweak every person's webcam. We can tweak the colors. And so you'd be surprised at how much we can do. We'll get 8 people in there. And if we get them for 15 minutes, we just go and just tie them all together, increase the contrast where we need to, do all the other things that we need to do. And it really makes a huge difference in how it looks. But being able to send out your own kit, I mean, and it's not just the video, it's the audio. I mean, having, mixed pre's with Countryman's with noise assist.
Imagine if the actual Dolby Vision workflow included trims for people's Zoom. In other words, it actually had the profile of the person's camera and said, okay, match that VT we just showed of this person, and actually use the same color bias and also gamut. It'd be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's again, baby steps towards it. But I think that the thing is, I think it's gonna be hard to not as other companies start to use something like this, it's going to be hard for it's hard. It'll be hard to be a big company not producing content at this quality if we keep pushing down that path. Go ahead, TJ.
One thing I noticed as I was chatting with people online about the event is how much more engaging this was than somebody standing on a stage just blabbing away. The ability to focus in and then cut in. There looked like there had to have been multiple takes in times, because sometimes you were cutting in and then the wide shot again, and that made just the whole presentation was much more engaging.
Yeah,
to watch.
It's. I think that what we're seeing there is again an evolution away from the stage, where you could never produce something as compelling on stage as you can when you cut. And I'm a big fan, obviously, of the Interatron process. So I really like being able to have people look straight into the camera. I think Google did that their last launch. Their one was everybody looking off camera, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, it was just this amazing, like, you had this huge opportunity to be personable. And, I think that one of the things that you have to be careful of in general, I'm not saying about any specific project, but in general, you also want to let people be. I think that what people don't get is, I think that what we saw in that was really compelling hosts presenters who were asked just to be themselves, not like figure out how to talk when a jib shot's flying over their head or do something zany or anything else. It was just, they were allowed to be, and I think that and look straight at you and just be, who they are, which they're amazing people, and so I think that you just want to let them do that rather than turn it into a stage show where you have to make this mark and you have to walk over and everything else. And I think that is, something I work on hard. I don't want people to be sitting there walking around and everything else. I just want them to sit and be, and then cover that all up with, graphics and B-roll and other things like that to make it more compelling, to tie that in. But I think that when we stop trying to, asking people who are not actors to be actors is the same as asking a video engineer to suddenly do all your audio. But they are compelling people, and you want to give them a space to do that. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, when TJ mentioned that, all of a sudden I immediately went back to how many conference rooms in Vegas that I would have sat in this exact meeting in like an NAB or something. And so the intimacy, as you were talking, Alex, about we're seeing the bear in their cave, and they're in a completely different comfort zone, and consequently the intimacy of interaction that the surprisingly similar Mukana look, ability to interact with them personally from wherever in the world in the moment was kind of magical, and there's an intimacy there. I don't know, that's just a reflection I heard.
No, I think so, and I think that being able to find it, I love the fact that we got to see a lot of people in their own space. With the sound editor from Brassic, like looking at that big board next to him and him just being in his space and he's comfortable and everything else. It wouldn't have felt the same way. He would have been a person outside of that if he came to NAB and was on a stage. He would have had he wouldn't have been as comfortable. We wouldn't have gotten what he does as much as we do when we see it there. So I think that there's definitely, but this is kind of, if you look at Dolby Summit, this is why I'm really over live events, like in-person events. I'm like, because it's baby steps. It's still the 320 by 240 version of what's possible, but you can see the pieces starting to come together where we have interaction with the audience. And I do appreciate everybody who came. So, it was great to have you all jump in. I wanted to make sure there were some folks that knew what the system looks like and how to use it. But if you look at who was lurking also, there was VPs from EVS and some folks from, company down south, and so there's a whole lot of people that were wandering around in that group. It wasn't exactly the viewer numbers, but who they were, and I think that's what's going to spark a push for HDR or for Atmos specifically. And we have to remember that with Apple taking Vision, and putting it on the phone, the rest of HDR is done. Like we can give up on HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and HLG. And all those things are gone, because no consumer is going to know anything other than Vision now. The game is over. And there's been a big push and everything else. Now, maybe, but so it's important for us as media developers to learn it, get really good at what we're doing here and figure this out. And my goal is to have, and here's the thing is that I'm going to do the best I can to bring you some experts and and teach you what I know about it. But I know that what my goal is to have you guys then get ahead of me, and start, and us, that's where this real power is going to come, is where we got a whole bunch of people that all are getting smart together. Like, for instance, Victor got introduced to QLab. I've known about QLab for years, but Victor knows way more about QLab than I do. And so, and so, like in this group, we want to introduce you to these things. I want to get it. And I'm going to work on, I'm working on, for instance, getting a class together for Resolve, because right now you need Resolve to produce events like this. Like, there's not any other solution for that. Still using Final Cut. Don't want to scare anybody. But for this kind of work at the moment, we can only do it in Resolve. And so, so I want to get everybody up to speed. And so we're going to work on some more dedicated training, and that'll be one of the experiments with more dedicated training to get people going on that process. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One other thing I wanted to say, and that was Mukana looked really, really good. Great job on getting that going. We were able to get in there the two-factor authorization, authorization. That's the word, and everything like that. That was it was great.
The reason it worked well is because of all of you, because we use it every day. Like there's so much of stuff that you have to. There's so much of this that you have to do reps, and wire it up and everything else. And so, this group has been integral to having that success. So, anyway, so I can't get into too many of the details right now. I'm working on getting it okay that we can talk more freely about it. But go ahead, Alex.
I really liked the Q&A. I'm glad we were able to prime the pump and say as soon as anyone else went there, they saw there was already a little kind of bit of activity going on. I think that was quite cool of us to be part of the getting the community going in the Q&A. But I really liked how the Dolby people were there and answering questions properly. And I really liked that. I got some really good information from them about the Apple iPhone 12 to Final Cut workflow. They just answered it. That was really good. So I liked it. I felt I was talking to the real people, so it felt again like a developer conference. Yeah.
You were talking to the experts. Like, those are like the experts, on at Dolby, and that's a feature that we had in an older version of Mukana that hadn't been, or not older version before Mukana. There was another app that we had that had moderator response, text response. We haven't needed it here because we get to every question. But one of the things that we brought it back because you're watching a lot of content and you want to be able to answer that content without talking over it because people are actually watching it. So there was a different interaction that it seemed like it would make sense to repurpose that Q&A.
I think it was really good how you can say to other clients, look how Dolby staffed it properly. They had people there waiting with the real answers. And that's, 80% of it really. And also, of course, moderating it. But just the fact that you think, wow, I have now got the definitive answer that they can talk about publicly, at least to me. And I thought that was really, really good. So I felt that this is the community part, the community building part of people feeling happy about being part of the summit as opposed to it just being a playback of a video.
Well, there's way more reason to be there. There's way more reason to be at the event when you can ask questions and get it. Like when we did the first time we did the moderator response was when for Lexology, they were launching Moto 6 or something like that. And they had 6 engineers in the back end answering the questions. And we were answering 150 questions an hour, between 6 people. There's one moderator that just passes all the questions back to everyone as they go. And you were able to, instead of 10 or 12 questions an hour, it was 100. Now we took the most popular questions and threw them to the actual show, but everybody got their questions answered. And if you think about a product launch where I'm going to come to a product launch and I know there's a high probability that my question will be answered. If I have a reasonably good question, it's going to be answered. Why would you not be there? And that's the, and then the playback, it seems like a afterthought. It's really like you want to make it that the real juice is coming live and being part of that conversation. So
So that answers the point saying, but we want live events. We can't just be like Apple and play a video out that we made 2 weeks ago. No, this is actually a live event because you get your actual real question answered by the real person if you turn up.
And the hard part is figuring out how to deal with Apple, like an Apple level event, because you're talking about an order or a couple orders of magnitude more people watching, and we have tools for that, but you have to rethink the entire process. The process starts to become, you need more and more infrastructure on the back end at about 800 people watching. So once you get to that number, as you get more than that, you start having to have, depending on if they don't know how to use it, then you can go up to thousands. But once they know how to use it, it's like we did an event. I think I've talked about this before, but we did an event where we were we took the comments out of Facebook and we tied those comments to a database that drove a graphic on the screen, and the graphic would go up and around in real time. And when it got to the top, it would send out a ping from to an Arduino, which then sent an electrical impulse to a solenoid, which then pulled the trigger on a flamethrower, 30 feet of flame, like not like the little one that, like a real one from Hollywood. So the audience is sitting there tapping along, and they're kind of playing along, and it took a long time to get it to go off the first time. It just, it went up, and suddenly, because you have a graphic that ties them to, there's a positive reinforcement that when this gets to the top, we're gonna fire the flamethrower, and that positive reinforcement made it that it wasn't random, and then they went crazy. Like it was, it took out the event, not on the platform, like that we were working in, because there's 140,000 interactions a minute, 140,000 interactions a minute, and because suddenly everyone was just going, and the thing is that while it was a failure on many cases because of it crashed 3 times, it was a success. And I realized that, wow, does the audience want to be part of this? Like the audience wants to be part of the event. And there's no reason why we can't viscerally connect them. When you start converting audience interaction to electrical impulse, you're talking about a whole different level of what can be done, in the environment. And so there's a lot of, and they went crazy, like if you right now with all the sports, they're doing all this like piping the sports in and everything else. If you put speakers, in the stadiums, and had people yell into their phone, it'd come out of the speaker, like the audiences, people would be screaming into their phones, and it would be bigger because you didn't have to have a seat. You didn't have to have a seat, and the loudness would be a real problem for the team again. Like that now the home team and you'd have a whole like.
Yeah, it's interesting in the case of soccer, different songs are sung by different parts of the audience. Right, so if you're a different part of the stand, you're singing a song, and you get the people around you to sing your team's song, but maybe 3 songs being sung at the same time. But if you can think metaphorically, what is the audience's song that they want to sing about what they're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
If you're seeing the launch of something new from Google or Facebook or Apple, what is the comment that then can be spread around by everybody, and they can be repeating and saying, and that actually affects what is being. What everyone sees, and you can see and obviously it's a bit word cloudy, but if people actually feel they're contributing to the event by their singing a song, metaphorically, that'd be really cool.
But you could also think about games, like think about the American Ninja or American Gladiator or whatever, but think about those things where the audience is choosing how high things are, or how low things are, where things are, like they're voting on it or pushing it. There's a whole different level of interaction that's possible. Go ahead, Grant, and then Courtney.
I watched. It was 2 a.m. And so I was watching on my new iPhone 12 Pro, and so lying in bed in the dark, it looked amazing. And actually, the tip to turn off to turn off auto brightness was a big deal. It seemed like it made more of a difference than just having the brightness be more. I could max out the brightness, but turning off auto brightness made a big difference. But another observation I had, and this is about virtual events in general, is when we have all of the participants are from home, it pulls the audience in because it's all a level playing field. And even if we're watching a live stream, I think this is what's fascinating to me now, because I'm doing all these large events with everybody in Zoom, and I'm also doing a whole bunch of large events just live stream. And what I notice is when we have a studio and most of the content is coming from a studio, that's one more reason where there's a slight disconnection, versus everybody being at home. It feels like they're the same. And so even watching some of the Q&A on that event, people are all just in their homes. And so when I'm watching it, I'm feeling like this is no different. And maybe it's because we're so used to doing Zoom calls now that you're watching a full screen. It could be a Zoom call. What's the difference? That they can't see you, but it feels the same. You're pulled into this.
I agree.
Really cool.
I think that there's something that I noticed when we were doing Hangouts, because we were Google's white glove service, and literally if someone at Google typed, "I need a Hangout done internally," I got the email. So anyway, the thing that I noticed pretty quickly was there is something very compelling about watching other human beings at this height, just not a bunch of pizzazz or big moving cameras or something, about having them look right at you and talk to you. There's just a connection that you have with that person that you don't have on stage with 1,000 people. There's an energy that you get with that, but there's something much more compelling about it. We tried to do lots of other things, and I found that I started thinking I would rather have, instead of 5 people, in most roundtables, I would much rather do that over Zoom. I think that the experience of 5 people or 6 people talking to each other about a subject is way more compelling when each one of them has their own window and you just see them that way, rather than, because then when they're looking at each other, they're looking at you, and I think that the eye-to-eye contact, or the near eye-to-eye contact, and I think that's one thing that we have to fix, is getting better teleprompting or teleprompters. We embedded a camera into a teleprompter, a web camera into a teleprompter, and we're thinking of looking at that again, because building something that's really light with a Brio in it, that is basically vacuum packed, so that the Brio is embedded into the screen, essentially, because I so want to get back to that feeling of them looking right into your eyes all the time, and so I think that's kind of my next level of stuff. That's what I'm going to be working on over the next couple months, is building that out so that it's go ahead, Courtney.
I watched on a big screen with Chromecast, and unfortunately I didn't have HDR in my either the big screen or the Chromecast. I have a new Chromecast ordered, but it looked fabulous. The quality of the image even looked great in SDR on a 55-inch screen. And do you think, as far as interactivity goes, do you think Apple will ever do anything where there's audio participation?
Absolutely not.
So, yeah.
No, it won't be. But I think that there are, for other companies that are a little bit more aggressive that way, I think that they could do it. I think that Apple really wants to control the message. I think that they, I wouldn't expect them to go down that path in any point in time. They're pretty good at it. So I think that they would. I would be highly surprised if they did that. But I think that there are obviously a lot of other big companies that, and I think that when I would say never say never, because I think that when people realize that, like the problem is a lot of times we are, and I don't think we got it quite. I don't think it's quite right yet. I think that one of the things about Mukana right now, and I think that it's important. One of the things I think works in the current version of Mukana that we didn't see in the summit was we pumped the answers back into Mukana in here, in Mukana, and I think that keeps reminding you that you could ask a question, and it's just hard to figure out framing wise how to do that, because what kills like what kills you in YouTube and Facebook and all these other ones is that the comments and the questions are all intermingled, and most of the comments are trash, So you are trying to, and the reason that everyone's interested in low latency video is because they're trying to respond to the audience. But the thing is that you're trying to dig through a trash heap for a couple diamonds, that you can actually use. Instead, you move it over where the diamonds are where they are, and the audience, by voting, the audience, pulls the diamonds out and shows you where they are, and you can leave, in this case, because it was a very vertical market and because all of you were there, there was almost no trash in the chat as well. So it made it a better experience that way. Mickey?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to comment on an earlier topic we had that I really liked how, say, for example, an example was Kevin McHugh, the guy from Sky Sports, and also Jane Gillard, who was interviewing him. I really liked how that the two definitely have worked together in the past, and they already had a relationship. So they were both very comfortable and very candid when they were talking with each other. And it opened up for them joking around, talking about how they had to work in the mud for some of the games, and it's definitely like such a different experience from like the typical like on stage we are presenting to a bunch of people kind of discussion. And also like Christine, I forgot her last name, the head of music partnerships.
Thomas.
She speaks so well. She's such a good speaker. Oh.
Yeah, she's great. That was quite a board behind her. That's a really nice.
I think that was a DFC.
It's a really nice room. That room is really nice. Victor?
The discussion with Little Negrito was absolutely incredible. I mean, his artistry came out so heavy, but then him being able to blend that sincere artistry with the technology, it just it gives me hope that, me too, I'll be able to, someday be able to incorporate something like Atmos into my music, because obviously it's happening and it's where it's going.
I was thinking about you.
Let your freak flag fly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was thinking about you during that session, Victor. I was glad that I saw you there, because I was like, oh, Victor we have to work on this, like together, because I think that.
I think his description of he's not mixing his freaking. I just love that. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. We really like him. Like, he's just an amazing energy, amazing person. Just really, really fun to be around. Go ahead, Alex.
Please bring him on here.
Sorry.
Please bring him on here.
I'll see what I can do. I don't want to push too hard on that, but I'm going to see. He's well equipped now, so we'll see if we can pull him on. Go ahead, Alex.
We did an experiment a few weeks ago when we were kind of did a little mini Zoom in parallel with the Apple second Apple event. And
Right.
It was interesting to work out what could we do that's actually paid for by somebody, or media paid for by somebody, to be parallel to another event, to actually incorporate it, not to necessarily leech upon it, but to be the right kind of commentary and the right kind of community associated with a big event like Apple. So if Apple aren't going to do the interaction that we kind of want, finding the right people to answer questions or chat or deal with votes or little things about as they happen while another event happens would be valuable, at least to whoever wants to sponsor it. I don't know who that would be, or the right people, but maybe this will be associated with bigger brands like car launches or PlayStation. It's a bit late for the current launches, but maybe near the game, some big game launches or something like that.
I think that, again, we'll experiment with it. We're going to do that a lot more, because I think that model worked really well. That is an experiment of not public. Here's the problem. What we've had in the past as a single screen experience is that the issue that we got into in that single screen experience is that you can't talk over them. Like, you can't talk over them because it would now get in the way and everything else. That's what I've done a lot with Twit, right? On MacBreak, we cover the launches and everything else, but then we don't talk as much, because in this one we can talk all we want, because if you don't like it, just turn it down. You don't have to. If you're really into it and we're interrupting something, just don't listen. But generally, you could do that, and it worked. I think that model, I've been trying to sell that model, what we just experimented with the Apple event. I've been trying to sell that model to people for 10 years. And I just was like, let's try this and see what it would look like. And I think that when you think, there's a lot of places, like, so for instance, think about sports. You can't call the game, say where they're at and scores and everything else, but you can't talk about football. or you can talk about baseball, and you could do it with a bunch of folks that used to play it, maybe even on that team. We did that. We did that with basketball as a test a couple years ago. Extremely compelling, where we had a social media person and an ex-player from that team talking about the game. And it was I went from not knowing anything. I don't understand. I didn't understand basketball at all. I didn't understand how it works. It's just this mechanic. I was a wrestler in high school, so I didn't have any. I never even watched a game because I was wrestling. And so for me, having these two folks that really know basketball going back and forth and answering simple questions from people about how basketball works. In 26 games, I went from not knowing anything to being, and then I found the game really compelling to watch because I understood it, And so I think that there is a real opportunity to, and I'll probably invite you guys to some more experiments in that area, even, like where we're going to play with some games and stuff like that. But I think that what I find a lot of times when you're doing something that's way out there is that you just have to do it. You have to do it until the money shows up. Like you can't, if you wait for someone to sponsor it, I think that we'll have a hard time. I think what we have to do is find these events and start doing them, and someone's going to see it. And then you have sponsored by whatever, kind of thing.
Because you do in the recap world, TV show recaps. For something like Game of Thrones, they had some websites had two recaps at the same time. One was the recap for people who read the book, another was the recap for people who were just watching the show. Mm-hmm. And if you follow that in parallel, well, you could have a basketball game and you could have two groups. You could have the groups of people who already know about basketball that aren't going to be answering the newbie questions. Yep. And then the muggles one, and quite happily muggles. And so I'll just go along and say, I don't know about the game, but I want to be part of the community and be introduced to the friendliness of the community. And then maybe I'm open to be convinced. And it's two separate groups at the same time.
We pitched doing that for the basketball thing is to have multiple streams for different verticals, because there's no reason why you couldn't, and have somebody that is doing it. It was a little too complicated at the time to do that, but in Pittsburgh, it's funny. They in Pittsburgh, it doesn't happen anymore, but in the past they would have they were literally things for wives and girlfriends to learn about football, to make sure that they all got along in the house, and they were very popular, And now you have women in Pittsburgh that know way more about football than the average person, and it's again, and they're much more into it. They did it as a way to make sure that it wasn't just the game that the guys watched; it was a game that everybody watched.
Well, the conversation the conversation you have out in the parking lot, where you're actually talking about the food that you're eating with each other while you're all, Yeah. I vaguely know that's what you do in the States, is that you have people out there in the parking lot all together with and having their own food, all chatting about stuff. Right. It's a bit like with cricket. Sometimes cricket lasts 2 or 3 days. So what happens is that sometimes that's just a picnic that lasts 4 hours, and there happens to be a cricket match in the background, and you're all just chatting away, just having a nice time.
Yeah. Go ahead, George.
So Alex, now that this event has come to pass, I mean, obviously we all are looking at what's going on in the industry. I know there's folks that love to go to the movie theater, but I don't really see myself, wanting to go to the movie theater on a regular basis anymore moving forward. I mean, over the next couple of months, we look like we're going to be inside still. Do you see this industry maturing on a fast track to be able to, obviously we love being in our living rooms now. Do you see this industry fast tracking over the next year or two?
Which industry fast tracking?
Just Dolby Vision in general, Atmos. Yeah. The living room, just bringing all of this to our living room. That way we don't have to go back outside again.
I think that I really think that the only way to, like, for instance, if I go to a movie theater, and this was long before I knew anybody at Dolby, the only theater I would go to was a Dolby Cinema. Like I won't go to any other theater. There's an IMAX in San Francisco, but the audio is 2 frames off, and it's been off for a decade. I haven't actually paid to go to an IMAX movie for a decade, because I would just walk over to the manager and go, "You're still 2 frames off," and he'd give you a pass for the next movie. They're not gonna fix it, And maybe I'm the only one that notices, but it drives me absolutely crazy for the first 10 minutes of a film, and then my brain kind of sinks in and I can watch it. Once I got to the Dolby Cinema, it was like, okay, it sounds better than the IMAX in my opinion, and it was way better. So to me, the future of this is what I think is going to happen, is I think that a lot more people are going to be getting over the next 6 months and a year are going to be getting really good home theaters or much better home, even if it's just a sound bar. You know, these sound bars are pretty sophisticated now. Spend $1,500 on a sound bar and you get the science of mapping up firing speakers and, you know, a couple of extra things is pretty amazing. I think people are going to invest heavily in their home system. And then I think the only theaters that survive are the best ones, you know, like, cause people are going to go, I'm not going to go to like I have at home, I have a pretty good TV and I got 7.1 already in my, it came with the house when I bought it. Fortunately, as a geek before me. So the 7.1 in the living room. And I'm so used to that it really needs to be a really good theater for me to be willing to watch a movie outside of it, you know, and I'm going to get a better TV soon. But once I get the new TV, it's probably going to be somewhere like 80 inches, you know, 8K. That's what I'm going to probably put in there. Is like why be incremental, you know? And so, but it'll be vision and everything else. Once I have that and I get it into 7.1.2, which is putting some speakers up above, I think I'm pretty much done. Like I'm not going to I don't really want to go to the theater after that, except for going to Dolby Cinema, where I want to see a great film at its full capacity. And I think that's you know, and it doesn't have to be Dolby Cinema, but it has to be really high quality. But I don't think that the having the 8-plex or the 12-plex, I think that's over. Like that's, you know, we need to give that up. It was not, you know, we'd go in and sometimes I go in and I go, the sound and image is better at my house, you know, and you can have it the way you want it. Like I happen to like it really loud. I like everything shaking, you know, like when I'm watching a movie, and my wife doesn't like that. So she wants something different. And we can do that. Go ahead, TJ. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you one little thing when I said that. The number one complaint to THX when THX was really pushing down the path, I talked to someone who happened to be on the other end of those calls. You call 1-800, you call THX or whatever at the end of the theater. Number one complaint was that the audio was too loud. Number two complaint was the audio was too soft. Like of all the things that you can do, no one can agree on what they want. TJ.
To George's point, if you look at how the current surround systems have evolved, there's always been the niche of nerds and geeks who are willing to run wires through their walls and do all that kind of crazy stuff, me being one of them, of course. And the average person really doesn't either have the capability or the desire to just mess apart their house or their design. And so a lot of home theater in a box and that kind of thing started to evolve to address those issues. And it wasn't really until after that started to happen that then you really started to get a lot of surround sound and 5.1 things in broadcast and in general streaming. And now we're starting to move to that, like Alex said, with the sound bars and things of that nature, which are incorporating the upfiring speakers to bounce off the ceiling. And I think as that starts to proliferate, we're going to end up with Dolby Atmos being a lot more common in the future.
And it's not just video and everything else. I mean, I've really gotten into listening. You know, Tidal does Atmos music, you know, and they have a couple playlists. It's not just one playlist, by the way. There's a lot of stuff hidden in there. And they did Tom Sawyer in Atmos, which is really good. Anyway, so it sounds super clean. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, I did have to do a lot of digging to root out all of the. Yeah, it was really hard to find. But I will say, as I've been listening to a lot of that as of late, the old songs that they've mixed into Atmos are really just sort of like extra reverb and stuff. It's the newer stuff that I found a lot more compelling.
Well, it's because the newer stuff is more discrete tracks. You know, it was the way it was tracked is the thing that makes a difference. And go ahead, Mickey, you were going to say something about that, and I'll come to you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, definitely agree with that because you really have to write for it. You really have to compose for it. It's not about like, you know, oh, I have all these, you know, stems. I'll put this here. I'll put this there. You really have to take advantage of the format and write for it.
One of the things I want to play around a lot with kind of ambient music that is in Atmos. So I'm going to be playing a lot with that, where it'd be really good if you're watching slides of what's coming up next and everything else to have like a blue, like, and have things just kind of just playing with it and moving around you and everything else, so that you have that experience in between. And so, I'm going to be kind of playing with that. But I think that to Mickey's point, I am going to take some old stuff. I ordered it before I told you guys, because I know that they'll all be gone. Probably the world supply is going to disappear after I say what I'm about to say. If you're into rave at all or into techno, back in the day, there was a band called The Shaman. And The Shaman, one of my favorite bands in the late 80s, early 90s, and the lead singer unfortunately died. They did something that was revolutionary back then. They took their song called Moving Mountain. That was their big club song, and they made a disc called Progen, Progen. And what Progen did is took all the stems and put it on the disc. And now the reason that they did it was, what we would do is, I know I don't look like it now. I was a rave jock. So when you were spinning, we got Progen on 3 albums. So we had 3 records of Progen. And what you would do is you would do a front cell. So you'd be playing some other thing. You'd be playing a Kraftwerks or Front 242 or whatever. And then you'd spin in, you can spin in clips. You could individual clips of Moving Mountain to tell the audience, to project to the audience that you're going to come into that song. And what that does is, the people who really like that song, and at the time it was a really big deal, they'd start coming back on the dance floor, because they could hear that coming, and you're basically broadcasting it through 2 or 3 songs that it's coming. But then you could slide right into it and do your own mix. Now, what happened is people started getting it all into their EMU Emaxes and started to rebuild it. And there were like 1,000 mixes of Moving Mountain. There's all, and then they packaged some of them onto these discs. And so it was an amazing, like, open source. And I think that primarily the reason that song was so successful was because of them open sourcing essentially their song and letting everyone remix it. And we saw that with Billie Eilish, doing it in Logic. It ships with one of her songs, and we haven't seen a lot of remixes, but it'd be really fun to do that. And those are the 2. So I ordered Progen, and I had one. I can't find it, and so I finally just I'm just gonna buy another one. But anyway, I want to play with that going in, but to your point, I think that you have to design for it. You have to think, I'm going to have this music going over here, and then I'm going to have this coming in here, and I'm going to bring it around. And I think that as more people get these, it's going to keep growing. Go ahead, Sky, or Jeffrey, and then Sky.
Yeah, it'd be nice to actually do a lot of remixes just by pulling all the stems out and going from there. 2 things here. First of all, I can't wait for Zoom to actually get into Dolby, because it'd be kind of fun to have John Idelson over here and you're over here. And
you know what service does that?
What's that?
Blue Jeans. Blue Jeans has a Dolby experience like built into it. And it's very disconcerting when you first start. So I was in all these meetings in Blue Jeans and actually, which I hate, other than the sound. But I had my little earpiece in, so I didn't hear it at all. Like, it didn't mean anything. And then I played it with my open speakers on my laptop, and I suddenly realized that people's voices were all placed in space. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is like, at first it was very disconcerting. But Blue Jeans does it right now, and hopefully Zoom will catch up to Blue Jeans. There's not much. Zoom doesn't have to catch up with other people very often, but they do there.
Yeah. But my other question is, with Dolby, and if they fix the whole glasses issue, how do you think that VR will actually start to play? If it will play more of a role, or still be just kind of dumpster fire-ish?
I think VR just needs a lot more time. Here's the challenge with VR is that you can't get the resolution yet to a little headset. So you have to just fail a lot for a while, because it's just the resolution that you get into it isn't high enough. And I've definitely had some really compelling experiences. We streamed a lot of the first 4K stereo, which is 2 4K streams to each eye, multi-camera. And at that point, it started to get pretty interesting, but it's really hard to do. It took $500,000 of hardware to do that. So it's not like you can just put it together. So I think that at that level, it starts to get there. I think Facebook's went the right direction of doing venues, which is 180 degree, because you don't really need to look behind you. But I think it's still a long way away. I think that AR is going to be massive. like just massive. Like I don't like I've been doing AR research for AR research or heads up display research since the mid 90s. So I was working on heads up displays, and when you get that data, so if you look back on heads up display, so the early HUDs are all, aircraft, fighters and helicopter pilots and so on and so forth, of getting a whole bunch of extra information to their, that they can watch and not be distracted. So if we go back to that, then you start seeing what's possible, because, being able to have glasses on that's giving you a whole bunch of extra information around you revolutionizes what you're doing. So if I walk into a historical site, having something show up all over it, like this is this and this is this and this is this, and I can click on it and hear more, and I can go, it'll change tourism forever, and you could even take it like, I'm gonna, now that I have a little time, more time than I had before, I'll give you guys some stuff to play with that I've been testing with photogrammetry. But you can take a historical location and just set it in your living room, and walk around it. And so I think that AR is going to hit faster than VR. I think VR will eventually be a big deal. I do think VR is extremely compelling for short pieces. Like I'm going to show you something where it's all around you and then drop you back out again. And I think for games it works really well. Grant, and then Sky. And if you are an educator, please raise your hand. We're going to go into education. We ignored a whole bunch of questions because a lot of them at the beginning were based on things I couldn't probably talk about. So we still talked about it, but I don't even know if this hour will stay published. So anyway,
Alex, how do you want me to manage those? Do you want me to just kill them?
Nope.
No, leave them there.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do education from 8 to 9. And then we're going to go back to questions and we'll answer the questions that we missed. So, and we'll definitely leave that up. So anyway, so let's go ahead and I'll start bringing people in here.
You did say
I'll plan for that then, but I do have to head out. So
okay. I did say what?
You did say Grant, and then you continue talking. You said that I could speak. Can I speak?
Go ahead. You can speak. No, I just wanted to get people started to get them in. That's all. Go ahead.
Awesome. I just wanted to just mention about we're talking about the audio in space. One of my favorite things I do is mixing live sound in lots of different environments, and so I do a cappella mixing, and so lots of theaters, lots of concert halls, arenas. I've done lots all around the world. Actually, I've been lucky enough, and what I find really fascinating, and it ties into movie watching as well, is that there's lots of technology that has come along. Different speaker sizes, arrays of speakers bouncing off the ceiling, all this different stuff has come along. But at the end of the day, the space that you're in plays a huge part in what you hear. And so sitting in a smaller room as much as you could dedicate something in home is different to the large space that you have in the huge, theaters. I went to City Walk in February. I was in LA and went to City Walk and it had just been done. Atmos was in there, and it was just spectacular. Because I think there's something about a large room and the amount of air pressure that has to be pushed to make that sound happen.
Well, and also millions of dollars worth of speakers is going to sound different than a $1,500 sound bar. I mean, what really turned me on to Atmos music was I was in a theater near here that has 170 speakers in it that are the best you can buy. Like, I think each one of them is worth, $10,000 or $15,000, and then the main ones are $250,000 each. And it's like spared no expense, pulled all the stops out. This is as good as anything's going to ever sound. And they took Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden, and they had all the stems, and they just put that into 3D space, and I was done. Like, I was like, this is what music should sound like. This is what, it should all be. And I don't think it was specifically Atmos. It was done. It might've been, it was an Atmos process, like local out of the HMU. But I was just stunned at how much different it sounded. And I'm doing the best I can. Like it's all around you. And and that was with something you didn't design for it. And so I think that people will get into it. I do agree with you that there are reasons. I still go to Dolby. I did go to Dolby Summit. I'm going to probably go back to see it, but I wait. Like there are certain movies that I want to see, and I go, oh, I want to see that in the theater. But here's the thing: is that I have to know that they're like, if it's at a Dolby Cinema, I know that they built it for that. Like, I mean, it's taking advantage of those technologies. If I don't see it at Dolby Cinema, I'm like, it's probably some little whatever, you know, and I don't need to go see that. I can see that at home, you know, and so I think that that's the distinction. And I think that we want to. I think that you definitely want to go to the theater and watch a lot of these things because there's a different experience. Exactly to your point. But I think that it's just that I'm not going to go to the movie every week. Like I'm going to go when you give me something that's worth going to, but I'm not going to just go see a product randomly made that isn't designed to have the full theater experience. Like top of the line, over the top. You know, I don't go to see romantic comedies in theaters. Well, I don't really see them anyway, but I don't go to see, I'm not interested in or independent films or anything else unless they're going to take advantage of the screen and the audio. I'm not going to pay to go see that. You know, like I definitely go to see all the Marvel ones I see in theaters. You know, like I don't even want to see the trailer. Like I know it's going to be a Marvel film and I know that I'm going to enjoy it because that's the kind of guy I am. I mean, I like those kind of movies. I don't want to see the trailer. I don't want to know anything about it. I don't want to know the storyline. You know, you had me at Marvel, you know, and I'll go see it, but I want it to be, you know, fresh on that screen the whole time. Go ahead, Sky.
What I continue to hear is the bullseye of all of this is what is an immersive experience.
Right.
And all the technology is trying to accomplish that, and the technology continues to change. To Jeffrey's point, is what is the display? Well, a heads up. Well, Bill Gates's comment was, why don't we just attach to the back of the retina? Which is kind of a scary thought, but it may be happening. And to Alex's point of, wasn't it Doctor Who that would create multiple layers of video and then let the audience re-edit their shows? So these are things that I held my hand up because I think that were important.
I think that the choose your own adventure, I think, has always been hard because it's just hard to make that compelling. A lot of times I don't want to think about that. I want to sit down and watch the film that I'm watching. I watched Mandalorian.
Yes, but in the sense of the geeks that want to play and want to be interactive. I mean, that's a passive versus observer versus participation. So there's time for both.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Lucas. And then we'll move on to education.
Yeah, just to add to Grant, I think one thing you can't underestimate is having the musicians themselves in their IEMs have 360 sound. So it might not be Atmos. There is, I don't know how you would pronounce it, Klang Fabric or something, which would do the 360 sound for every single IEM mix for every musician, and that improves quality greatly. That's it's insane how they start to, where was this instrument again? So even if you have still this normal stereo PA stuff, you have a much better performance just by adding the 360 to the musicians.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about last night was how cool it would be to have the Atmos creator in VR. So when we talk about VR, it'd be really good to have it here and just see the instrument like here and I go, oh, well, I want it to be over here. You know, like and I can move it around and and be able to visually think about it. It'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, and Mickey's like, that's absurd. Anyway, I'm gonna Alex, are you off? You look like you're ready to go. All right, good. It looks great. Have a good one. I'm gonna step away for a second and let Mickey check out all of our educators that just popped in, and then we'll start the education conversation. Go ahead, Mickey.
Alrighty, copy that. Hey guys. So yeah, Bruce, Aaron, Tony, Michael, and Stevie. Our same as usual. Please put your first name, last name, and location here in Zoom. If you guys see the meters, our goal is to hit -20 on the short term. So let's start off with Bruce and then Aaron afterwards. Oh, you're muted, Bruce.
Does that unmute me at this point? Okay, that sounds, is
Yes,
this,
sir.
yeah, welcome. Hello, everybody. We're from Naples, Florida. I think, how does that sound, Mickey? Is it coming in okay?
Yeah, I think you're in the ballpark there level wise.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron, and then Tony.
Good morning from Boston, where we have some snow on the ground on this Halloween. So hopefully the roads aren't too slippery for kids to walk around and get that candy.
Alrighty, that's a good check. Tony, and then Michael afterwards.
Good morning, office hours. I hope that you can hear me well. I am recovering from a tree falling on my house, and the damage was only to one of the gutters after they got the tree off.
Ooh. Do you have any control of your level there, Tony? What's your audio chain there?
I'm talking to you through the ATEM Mini.
You're using the built-in microphone inputs on it?
I'm using the microphone input from the ATEM Mini, yes.
Yeah.
Using the power
Maybe you
mic.
could just give us a 2 dB bump down.
Okay. How is that? The sun is shining bright right now. You wouldn't know that it's storming here.
It's gotten down too much. Are you doing the change in the software or on the actual ATEM Mini hardware buttons?
On the ATEM Mini buttons.
Yeah. Like, did you click it like twice, or how many times did you?
I went down twice, and
Okay,
I
so
came up once.
just so you know, yeah, you're around there in terms of level now. But just so you know, each time you hit the button on the ATEM, it does a 3 dB movement, either up or down.
Okay.
So it's a quite a noticeable jump. So yeah, just one notch down from your original level is good, which I think you're at now. But yeah, we'll move on to Michael and then Stevie afterwards.
All right. Good morning from San Francisco, where I have absolutely no Halloween plans. That's kind of nice for once. How's that?
Alrighty, that's a good
Thank you.
check. All right, Stevie.
All right. Good morning, everybody, from Lake Katrina, New York. I think I'm a little too either far away from the mic or not enough on your side. I'm going to try to adjust it a little bit. I got the most sketchy rubber band holding this thing. And if it goes and you see me disappear, it's because I got snapped in the face by a rubber band holding my mic. So if Steve goes blank, you know what happened. Is that any better?
You're coming in just a little too hot. So if you have
right.
adjustment there on your levels.
All right. Is that a little better now? Pulled it back a little bit. So I'm only using the software. You guys are really fancy.
Tiny nudge back up,
right.
back up. Yeah.
Coming back up a little bit more on this setting here. Seeing that number go blue is always a fear that I sleep with every night.
Yeah, it's a bit too low, and it's a bit too low now. Yeah.
All right. Maybe if I adjust a little bit my body towards the mic, it might be a little bit better to start.
Yeah, that sounds good right now.
All right, sounds great.
And those posters in your background still appear.
They're still backwards. Okay, I gotta figure that out.
No worries. Don't worry about it. Trevor.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, looks like we are a little cold. Good morning from the desert. Hopefully my levels are a little bit better now. A little hot maybe. How about that?
I think you're about there. Yeah, and cool. Emily, I don't know if you want to do a check. I don't know how loud or quiet you are compared to your husband.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome from Red Hook, where we had snow, but then it melted before noon, so that was nice. Looks like I'm a little low, but I think he moved my microphone on me. So I'm just gonna move my microphone back up, and I'll probably get a little louder too as I start talking. I see.
Yeah, maybe just this. Yeah, give us a check once you have that in position.
All right. So check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3. This is me. that all right?
Yeah, maybe just the slightest nudge up on your interface there, but I think we're in good shape.
All right. Yeah, there we go. 1 2 1 2 check. 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 check. Yeah, it looks about right now.
Cool. So yeah, Alex is still out, so I don't know. Chat amongst yourselves, I guess.
Just say good morning to everybody.
I was
It's good
here.
to
I was
see all the educators.
I was trying to organize all the questions. Anyway, so this was moving around there. So hi guys, let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
Okay, we're starting at the top of the list with Francisco Maricuz of Sonoma. Does anyone have any experience with Class for Zoom? It's supposed to be a Zoom type service specific for the classroom.
Does anyone? I haven't used it yet. Go ahead, John Middleton.
You really can't use it yet because it's not there yet. It's been announced, but it will come out. But there's going to be a lot happening in that space. That was the first one out of the box. At Zoomtopia, they announced Zaps, which are Zoom apps. So I think you're going to see a lot of things happening that will be course management LMS-like. My personal opinion is that we're going to look at the traditional course tools like Canvas, Blackboard, Desire to Learn. We'll feel a little bit like if we'd use reins as a steering wheel in a car.
Yeah. And again, I think that this points back to when I keep on saying that this is going to change everything and we're not going back, is because all of this investment is now suddenly focused, on this, and there's an enormous amount of money that's being played. And it's not that it's done yet. Like it's just, vegetables and carrots are just the base of the soup. Anyway, so but what we're going to see, sorry for the gross point blank reference. What we're going to see is this incredible progression of technology in the next 12 months, and it's to the point where you look at the keynotes that are starting to happen, the ones that we work on, the ones that other people work on. You can't do that on a stage. Like, we're starting to see that. Like, if you really tighten it up, you can't do that process on a stage, and that's going to make it very hard for companies to go back. In the same way that we're going to start getting technologies, and teachers are starting, well, us probably first, but teachers are going to start getting better at taking advantage of these technologies. And when they go back to the classroom, when it really hits you is when you try to go back. Like when I built my system that I'm going to put back together now that all these shows are done. When I built that system up and I was using it to teach classes in Rwanda, this is 10 years ago, I started teaching these classes where I had a telestrator and a whiteboard and I could go back and forth and I could play video and I could do all these other things. And then I went to Rwanda to teach the classes and I felt like I was crippled. Like I was like, I can't show you what I want to show you. I can't do the thing that I want to do. And some educators are going to reach that point where they suddenly realize that with all the tools that are in front of them, they can actually build a better class than they can in person. And I got to the point where I took years off and I came back and did one event for Justine Ezerick's, Vlog University, and immediately was like, I'm never doing that again. Like, it was just like, like that was hanging out with Justine and doing the thing and meeting everybody and all that stuff was great. But I'm never speaking in front of people again like that in person, because it was just so like brutally painful to deal with. I forgot what it was like to deal with hotel, conference AV and, not being able to have my full system and not being able to really do what I do. It was just, so once you get used to it, that's when I keep on saying, you're not going to want to go back once the tools come up to speed. Go ahead, John, and then Grant.
Yeah, this little faculty support group I'm with was discussing, chat used for discussion in class and threaded discussion going after class.
Yeah.
And the discussion started and somebody said, why would we ever go back to any of that? We would just Zoom.
Right.
And share Zoom activities. So there's going to be lots of things like that, like a grade book, and everyone goes, well, you have to have a grade book and learning management system. There's going to be different assessments now that we have the videos and things. So a lot of these old tools that were part of the LMS are just going to disappear.
Yeah. And this gets back into like what we're talking about, which is still an experiment towards education with what we were talking about with cooking. Hosmuk earlier was talking, his wife is doing a little cooking tutorial today, and he came in and showed a little setup, and Sky's been working on that. And it is an example of flipping the classroom. So we're going to talk about cooking, but what we're really talking about is flipping the classroom, which is that we're going to send you a recipe and a video of how to do something. And then we say in a week, you're going to actually get to hang out with the person that wrote that recipe to answer it. But that could be a teacher doing the same thing. Like, here's a video, here's your homework, and then we're going to talk about it, and that kind of extended experience, I think, is going to be, it's an experiment in this idea of flipping that classroom in a certain way that people get some time to think about it so that they discover what they don't know. And then the questions are way better. If they go out and try that recipe once and write down everything that they didn't understand, it'll be a very engaging live stream. And that's because you won't know until just watching it and trying to do it. You don't have time to think about it and put it together. What you want is to give people a little time to do it. Like, if I knew that I was going to be with the best bread maker in Portland or whatever, the guy that wrote Flour, Water, Salt, I never get them in the right order, but if I knew I was going to be on it, I'd make bread all week. Like, from his recipe, I'd just make bread all week, and then I'd come up with all these things that aren't really working or things that I'm confused about. And then you have this incredibly compelling conversation. And that's, I think, the future of a lot of this stuff. And Grant, you had raised your hand earlier. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just thinking, if someone came on just now and read the question and then listened to what you were talking about, they'd be like, sorry, you're talking about bread and cooking? Wasn't there a question about Class for Zoom? Anyway, Class for Zoom, just so you know, is in beta, but also is not a Zoom product, as in it's a partnered thing. And as John was saying, that the Zaps thing is huge, and I think essentially what it is the Zaps is adding a window in Zoom that you can do some other stuff. And so one of the challenges that we have with events in Zoom is getting people to interact outside of Zoom somehow, and so some people, they get their Zoom, it goes full screen and that's it. They don't know how to get back to their computer in any way. And so Zaps is going to help that a lot. If you think that you can hit chat down the bottom and it brings up the chat window, now you can hit another little button that's going to bring up like Slido. And to me, Class looks like that, where essentially you're getting more interactive tools and things like that.
Absolutely. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and the fun with that is, like Ron said, is that Zoom can take over and have that focus of attention, but then you can bring things into it. I'm working with a educator who has a STEM science kit, which is like an Arduino, and it's going to be a Zap within Zoom. So the students will be able to be creating little projects and programming on a physical device and have it interact with another student's device in a Zoom meeting. I mean, the potential here is just amazing. I'm just so excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. Bruce?
What's the schedule for the rolling out of the Zoom class and Zaps and all of that sort of thing? Has that been announced at all yet?
Go to zoom.us.
Yeah.
And there are announcements there.
Yeah, I'm really interested in whether what I'd like someone to develop is a UVC controller, a proper UVC control, like webcam settings, from Zoom to Zoom, like as a plugin, as a Zap, because, or Zoom just be able to do Zoom right now, we can do pan tilt Zoom inside of a Brio, for instance, but our big pain point is color. Can I color the person and manage exposure? And that's probably more important to us than pan tilt Zoom at this point.
Well, maybe we need a Blackmagic Zap.
Well, no, but not Blackmagic. I mean, right now we just need Brios. I just need to be able to control any webcam. The issue is that you have a bunch of consumers that we're sending kits out to, and if we don't have the budget to give them Blackmagic and we're sending them Brios, which is our typical one, that I need to be able to not just pan tilt Zoom, but I need to be able to color them. And I think that's an opportunity for a Zap, to have on both ends. So they just install it, and now we are able to totally control and color their camera and do little things like not allow them. Zoom needs to have a thing, not allow them to turn off their camera. because it causes a huge error on our side when they do that, because it shows you what you're sending them, and we're sending them a complex grid, and it creates a video feedback. And we just need to be able to say, you need to give us permission, but we basically need to be able to say, you can't, like, you have to permit us to control your camera, but then we lock it open, because we have to be able to, like, not let you do that because it's a real problem.
Or fix it so it doesn't do that.
Well, that would work too. It would actually work better to have us be able to lock it, because you're on broadcast. I don't want to show I don't want you to be full screen and have you show a screen. Anyway, that's not education. We'll move on. Next question.
Okay, Bruce Francis.
And I will admit, I just want to apologize to people if I freeform a little bit. I didn't sleep much last week. I went 4 days and slept like 3 hours total over 4 days, and so my synapses are a little freeforming. So anyway, I apologize if I take you off into routes. I'm not completely recovered. So anyway, go ahead.
We'll survive. Bruce Francis from Naples and the panel says, can we discuss the pros and cons of Seesaw?
Go ahead, Emily.
I love Seesaw. The pros to Seesaw is that it allows students to create.
Can you back up and explain what Seesaw is?
Sure. So Seesaw is an app that is a standalone app. So in the state of New York, they have a free version for teachers. So any teacher can sign up and create a classroom. You can also purchase it for your district. So in New York, it has to be purchased in order for you to use it to meet the new privacy laws. But what Seesaw does is it gives a workspace for students to interact with and create on their own or with something that the teacher has given them. So teachers can upload files, they can upload PDFs, students can draw on them with a screen, they can do it with a mouse or with a touch screen, obviously works better with a touch screen. They can take photos, they can take videos, and they can type into the program. So the teacher can send out an assignment or the students can create something from scratch. There's communication tools built in for families, so teachers can communicate with families within the app. You can have multiple classrooms in the sense of like a specials teacher can have Seesaw and either co-teach with the teacher and put that stuff into the students' files or create their own class and have the students go there. So it's not a learning management system because although you can roster your kids, you can't put in there's no grading system built into it. It's not for grading. It's literally for creating. The app is seesaw.me, app.seesaw.me. And I have a couple accounts. I could show it, but I mean, it's just like the tools that are built in. It's brilliant for K-6 because it really engages the students in creating and manipulating and explaining things all in one app. So you don't need Flipgrid and Google Docs and whatever else to get all those same creation tools. You can do it all within Seesaw. It also integrates with Google Classroom really easily. And I believe they're adding Teams now.
Good. Sky.
I'm just curious, what was the origin of that product? Because oftentimes that is why things get built internally to solve a problem. And I'm just curious what the origin story might be. I don't know why. I'm just curious.
I know that when I started using it a couple of years ago, they were creating a portfolio tool for students. So it was a digital portfolio where you can put your work so that parents could see and people in the school could see. So one of the other features that's nice is that if a student creates something like a video explaining something, or we had our kids walk around and take pictures of science terms like condensation and evaporation, and they took pictures with their Chromebooks and iPads, and then they recorded over their explanation of what the picture was showing, and they could draw on the picture. Then the teacher could download the assignment as a QR code and post it in the hallway. Like it comes with this pre-made QR code for each assignment the student creates with an image of the assignment in the center. So it's pretty to look at. They post them up around the school or they send them home and the parents can scan it with any device and it opens up that child's work. So they can see what their kid created digitally instantly.
That's great. No, go ahead, Bruce.
Is it an alternative to Zoom or a supplement to Zoom, or is it at all compatible with Zoom?
So unfortunately, not yet. It is a standalone app and it doesn't have a meeting feature. That's why we haven't done it as like marketed it as a different LMS to our districts. So that multiple districts that I work with, we tell them it works in combination with Google Classroom. You can open Zoom and demonstrate on Seesaw, and the kids can work collaboratively together on a project. So you can put multiple kids on one whiteboard or on one project, and you can link to a Zoom meeting or a Gmeet meeting. But the problem we run into is our kindergartners are all on iPads. And so if your school uses iPads, you obviously, the iPads tend to be older or the lower version. So you can't do the split screen and have the meeting running and have the Seesaw running at the same time. So usually the teachers demonstrate, get off the meeting, have the kids go work on it. The teacher can see in real time what each student is doing on their work as they fill it out. And so you know, for remote learning, it turned the game around. It also gives parents an app so that they can look into see their students' work without seeing the whole class's work. So the digital portfolio is also available to the parents.
One of the things I noticed with my kids is that the power of Google Classrooms is the teachers really having an enormous amount of, to get back to what Seesaw does, an enormous amount of being able to see in real time what the students are doing, you know, and my son was jumping on to his classes from his iMac rather than from his Chromebook, and it blinds the teacher, you know, and then he was falling behind, and the teacher's like, I can't tell what he's doing because I can't, you know, I can see when a student's having trouble, I can jump in and see it. And so, you know, it's an interesting, it was an interesting side of it that I didn't understand until, you know, because he's having trouble, like he just doesn't like it and doesn't like the whole process. And so my daughter seems to enjoys it, but my son does not. So it, you know, it's a challenge of figuring out how to make that work. Next question.
It comes from Nick Justitian, but I just wanted to note that we're running shy on EDU questions specifically, and we'll be going back to the other stuff, but make sure that if you're submitting questions, and please do, you put the EDU in front of it, and I'll get them to the top of the queue real quick. So Nick in Philadelphia, who's usually on the panel, but isn't, I think he's left for today. For many of us teaching remotely, the rooms we're in are small and have a lot of sound echo. Any suggestions on sound treating small rooms at home? Ideally, ideas that are DIY, and bonus points for solutions that also look good are able to be quickly set up and taken down in a home space.
The biggest thing is the area right in front of you. So like that is what, if we're going to treat something, we want to get the area right in front of us to suck up a lot of the sound. The rest of so there are a variety of things. For voiceovers, they have ones that go right around and they just kind of loop around you. But having a little bit of, and Mickey can talk about this more if you want, but one of the things that I've done in the past is had two little things that go on either side of my monitor that are Sonics. I don't have any Sonics that I can show you right now, but Sonics is like and it's just two panes of that on either side and then one across the top. And when I do that, when I build that little cove, it's really easy to take apart and put, you know, and I gave it, like I put it on, I taped it to, not taped, but glued it to foam core, a 1/2-inch foam core to give it some structure, and just set them there. And I just kind of taped them there, and I was able to just kind of pop that up. It cuts out 80% just by itself. It's like, okay, we're you know, and so that's the easiest thing to do it. Now, soft areas, you know, building more, the more soft you can do. What I'm in, and I'll be able to show this more next week, is I'm in a box. I built a cube of moving blankets to make this work. The other thing to do is not talk straight into a wall. So if you turn just a little bit, so my whole box that I sit in when I talk to you all is turned about 15 degrees from straight onto the walls, so that my sound doesn't reflect straight back. You know, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. And if I did it again, I'd probably make it more like 25 or 30 degrees. I think it would work better. Anyway, so I think that's and then the big thing is headsets. Like we're using a lot of these little mics, whether they're Piles or Countryman or whatever. They really, it's just because the echo is so much less than what's going into it from your mouth that you just don't hear it that much. Sky, and then John.
Well, I physically have taken a large cardboard box and set my laptop inside that, and then inside that was like a Snuggie blanket or a comforter. And so it's quick, it's a complete DIY, and you just take it apart, put it off in the corner when you're done.
John?
This is not DIY, but it's acoustic art. I put the link in the chat, and it lets you, they have photos that they have, but you could personalize them. And so this solved the problem I had, because people didn't like the gray tiles. I can't understand why my wife didn't like that. So now we have these square photos that have the acoustic foam behind them.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, try to, like, if you want to maintain the feeling that it's not like a studio, but it's still like a home office or your actual office. You can break up the sound with a lot of like soft material in your space. Put a nice like soft couch in. You can throw bookshelves around that diffuse the sound, as opposed to have it just keep on bouncing back and forth. Um, and if you want to build DIY acoustic panels, it's quite easy. You can build a frame that's maybe at the minimum 2 inches thick. The thicker it is, the lower the frequency that you can control. And build a frame, fill that up with fiberglass. What do you call this, insulation? A popular one for sound is Owens Corning 703. Cover that up with a nice fabric. I have some friends who they used fabric paint to actually turn the panels into like artwork, and it looks pretty cool. Um, yeah, and yeah, as Alex mentioned, think of like the voice coming out of your mouth, like, emitting in a sphere. So of course, cover the first area of incidence, but also think about the area above you and also the area around you. A carpet is a good thing to add. Rugs are good things to add as well.
And something as simple as, one of the things we've also used is you buy a $20, they're a set of stands with a crossbar that you use to do drops for photos or whatever, and you get a moving blanket with grommets and little hooks, and you can literally just set that up, throw it up. What you want is a lot more moving blanket than you have. You want to have what's called 100% fullness, which means that you have you basically pull it together, and so that 50 to 100% fullness, which means it's not just straight across. It's got lots of loops to it, and or folds, and you put that in front of you as well. And the nice thing about that is that you can set that up, run it across, take it down. Setting up and taking it down will take you 10 minutes. So it would be a relatively easy thing to do, and it'll suck up a lot of sound. Just other things to think about. Go ahead, Grant.
I was just going to say the DIY version of that is like the clothes racks that you can get. So you can get them from like IKEA. You get those big clothes racks. And talking of clothes, I had to do a show one time in a single bedroom apartment. We had a newborn child, and so I went into the closet, and we had all these clothes either side of me, and I managed to get the shot just right, and it didn't look like I was in a closet. And it was awesome, right? Because you had all these clothes all down the side were all like sound deadening.
I can see all these teachers. I can see all these teachers just starting to do all their classes from the closet. Like they're just in the closet. Here's a closet shot. They would sound really good.
Mink coats really are a great sound buffer. Just saying.
Go ahead, Trevor.
From an aesthetic point, are you able to get like the monoprice acoustic panels? I'm sure they're not as fancy, but can you just wrap them with like a fabric to make them look better?
I haven't seen the monoprice ones. The main thing is that if you start wrapping, they'll suck up some sound, but if you start wrapping them, it depends on what you're wrapping them with, because now that's a flat surface again. So it's the actual shape of the surface it's the fact that it's going to diffuse the audio, the reflections is the thing you have to be kind of trying to figure out. But I haven't seen that. It'd be an interesting experiment. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Rizal Harlandi of Tempe. Many graduate programs will be recruiting prospective graduate students in a few weeks. Is there a good platform or for building a virtual tour? What gear should we get? For example, gimbal stabilizers and things like that. And is there a good example of a virtual tool that the panel really likes?
Let's see. I guess the question is it a live tour or is it a recorded tour? Is part of the question there. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if I have recommendations for tools. What I would say is, to Alex's question, I think an effective strategy is probably a combination of live and recorded. And I know a couple programs have done things, which I actually think is probably the most effective. And if you want to throw a stabilizer in there, you would get like a DJI Osmo, but just walking around the space with an iPhone and probably a headset, just so that the audio is decent. But even, AirPods or just the wired headphones, either of that would work, and just keep it, just keep it as authentic as possible. And let, if they're small groups, then hopefully someone is there to assist with questions. Since if you're walking around with a phone, it's a little bit hard to see. But I think you could get by and do something very effective without too much overhead, personally.
Bill?
Yeah, as to the gimbal thing, gimbals are great and they can definitely smooth things out, but they require some definite effort and you have to kind of learn how to use them. Balancing them can be a little finicky. Once you get them working great, they can smooth out a walking shot, but it takes some time to prepare for that. If you want to go handheld, there's one other little trick that I learned a long time ago, which is a lot of people take their phone and they hold it out in front of them, sometimes with one hand or something like that, and that gets very jerky. So if you can figure out a way to get both hands on your phone and then take your elbows, put them against your body so that it almost forms a tripod, you will get a much smoother thing. And then turn from your torso rather than using your hands to move around. All those things tend to smooth out shots. And also think in terms of shots. Think in terms of starting your phone to get a shot and then stopping your phone rather than fire hosing around to get things, which causes sickness in people watching it unless you edit all the jerky stuff out.
One of the things, the other thing to think about really with virtual tours is maintaining a way that people can understand where they're at. So the reason you need to use wide shots and close-ups, you can do some close-up shots, but really having a wide angle shot and moving around lets people orient themselves. I've seen a lot of tours where people do stuff where they cut too much. They cut from here to here to here to here, and then you suddenly don't know where you are. And so I think that is something to always take into account when you're doing a tour. One of the things so wide angle, like the newer iPhones with that extra wide angle lens, man, it's just amazing to use that as a tour device. I would, if it was me and I was going to do a record, I would use the Osmo with the iPhone 12 at this point, but 11 would be fine with that extra wide angle lens on the Pro. Would be the way to do that, in my opinion. I think that if you really want to play with it, given what people are about to have, you can build 3D models with your iPad. So it depends on how serious you want to get. But remember, people can now take the room or take the location and drop it in their living room, and some of them will be and be able to move around them. Go ahead, John.
One of our community colleges used a company called campuswalkingtours.com or campustours.com. I put it in the chat, and they address that issue that they have a little map on the side. So as they take you to the various sections and they have video playing, they don't really do a lot of movement, but they have some good examples on there. So I'd say at least look at that. I don't know whether you want to hire them, but you can see what other tours were like.
The other thing to know is that, like, if you get something like a Theta, the Ricoh Theta, you can take single photos. So when I do, this isn't so much when I give people tours, but when I do site surveys, so I'm going to do an event somewhere, I do not show up without a Theta. So I have a Ricoh Theta, and I go in there and I just go like this a lot. But if I really want to get serious and I'm going to show it to other people, I'll put it on a tripod and I will step away, take the photo, and come back. And that now you get these rooms, and it's just it's a picture, and it's really high resolution, so you don't have to worry about any stitching or anything else. And there's plenty of web apps that will support moving around and viewing it. But the Theta it's not that expensive. It's I don't know, $300 or $400. But the Theta V I haven't gotten, but I'm gonna get this next month because I've got a bunch of site surveys. It's higher resolution, but that's a great tool to let people kind of roam around and really orient themselves, to what they're doing. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if I can necessarily recommend this unless you're at a large university, but when the pandemic hit, a bunch of students at Berkeley rebuilt the campus in Minecraft. And this is possibly one of the most like methodical Minecraft builds because they took everything of one block in Minecraft being 1 meter in physical space.
That's what I call
and to the point that, I mean, I guess when we went past no pass and the grade pressure was off a little bit, they got very detailed. But this summer, though, for a conference, I did some virtual tours, just screen sharing my Minecraft session, walking around, and they did it well enough that it was just uncanny how close the representation was. And I wouldn't use it as the only thing for a program, but I do think just some sort of virtual environment, even if it is not quite as detailed, because this was dozens, if not hundreds of students and probably thousands of hours collectively to build it in Minecraft. But the idea, though, of having an experience that you could control, that gives you, the thing that struck me was it gave you the feeling of being there, if not necessarily the actual look. And that was a really cool thing that I just never expected to be able to have or to walk around. The other resource, I suppose, depending on how big your campus is also just to not forget about. But Google Street View, if you have an open campus, can sometimes be a useful addition to walking through a space.
I did realize you could build a whole campus in Roblox. Probably easier than Minecraft because you can build better models in Roblox. It'd be a weird juxtaposition of the age of the student, though. Like if you're doing it as a virtual tour for 12-year-olds, Roblox. My daughter spends she doesn't make that much money, but she spends a lot of money on Roblox. So she's got this house and she's got all this stuff that she builds into it, and a car and scooter and stuff like that. Anyway, go ahead, Stevie.
I was just going to say, I did a few tours, not for a university level, but for elementary schools. And I actually have my trusty Mavic Pro here. And what was great was that I can fly overhead, take some aerial shots, and then there is an attachment that you can buy for it to kind of hold it. And it acts as a gimbaled camera in the space. So I was able to walk through the building and kind of show them where the restroom was and things like that, which was really nice. But as was mentioned, just getting used to the feeling of moving that gimbal around, and Bill get a great example of like kind of holding it to your chest and moving with it was really fun. But it was nice because the kids and the principal was really cool, happy that he could see the building from the aerial shot as well.
All right, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. My question is like, is this strictly a recruitment / marketing tool video that will be built, or is this to orient students that are already recruited to the campus? Because I think like marketing versus actual like orientation, the approach should be drastically different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to show you just a couple shots from Theta. Let me see if I can, just to give you a sense. I don't have it in a rotatable. I just found it on my photos. Let's see here. So this is actually let's see if I can get this to work here. There we go. This is actually from Erbil, Iraq. This is a Kurdish history museum. But I was able to you can see, like, get them out of the shot. But you can see that the resolution is pretty high, and this is not the most current Theta. But now you can imagine wrapping this all back into something that you can rotate and getting a sense of what that is. Now it's a school that we were working with there. But and you can see me here. I'm controlling the Theta from my iPhone to shoot it there. Anyway, so that gives you a sense of like the kind of resolution, and that's not even the full resolution of the image. So you really can get some great photos out of that for grabbing onto things and showing people. And that's useful not only for tours, but for teaching. Like if you want to go to give students a sense of the location, and incorporating those things into it. I can see, to get back to Zaps on Zoom, having a 3D or a VR viewer or just a 360 viewer that's incorporated into Zoom would be super useful for tours. So to talk through. Anyway, next question.
Trevor Walker out of Rosemont, California says, anyone finding successful methods to refocus and re-engage the students who were engaged at the start but are starting to fade now?
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
So we were working on this because we talked about it last week about how they're starting to have a dip again in engagement. And a math teacher and I came up with, I found this meme of a guy like tearing a log apart with his bare hands. And like they made a meme out of it about like breaking down exponents in algebra or something. And so then he made that as an activity for the kids. And that brought up engagement a little bit this week. I mean, it's only been a week, so we don't really know long term, but he said that what he's going to do is put it in as a challenge that the kids can get for either coming early to class, they'll be able to access it, or if they stay the entire time, he'll email them out, or they get all their stuff done, he'll email them out this opportunity to engage with the fun stuff. Also making just the class in general a little more fun, like not, being unpredictable in a good way is higher for engagement. Like if you're just always like, all right, we're going to have, 30 minutes of me babbling at you, then I'm going to put you in a breakout room and then you're going to do some problems and then you're going to come back, the engagement's going to drop and it's not going to come back. But if it's, a little more unpredictable, like, hey, we're going to do something fun today and then we're going to do something silly and then we're going to focus and then we're going to do something else and then we're going to come back, and keeping it unpredictable tends to have the kids coming back a little more. Also calling home, just to talk to them, not to the parents, talk to the kids one-on-one, face-to-face.
All right, go ahead, Aaron, and then Stevie, and then Michael and John.
So very similar to what Emily just said, I noticed a little bit of a dip in this past week as well. So what I talked to my students about was doing a flip grid about making slime. So similar to the coffee videos, I said to the students, if you finish your work, you can click on this link and you can make your own flip grid about making slime however you want. So the race to finish all their work this week was intense. And so many students who don't even verbally participate, but only participate in the chat this week, were the ones that were making the videos. So it was so nice to see that, pulling them back in and doing something fun. So I think I'm going to have to find a challenge every week. I think next week they wanted to do colored popcorn. So,
well, and this is the thing that I think we have to figure out, is how to cross-pollinate teachers so that you don't have to come up right now, like having you have to come up with one of those things every single week is really painful. I mean, it'll be fun, but it'll be painful for you to have to come up with something. Because I can tell you, as you come up with content, coming up with new content all the time is a thing. If you have thousands of teachers able to, interact with each other, like this one works, this one didn't work, this one works, like the one, and telling each other what's happening, we can start to get to a point where you're picking ones out that other teachers have already proven work for their classes, rather than having to come up with it yourself. And I think that is also the possibility of creating, when teachers create content that's talking about math or physics or whatever, this is one that, these are the videos that work. These are the, rather than teachers having to come up with their own animation about having 40,000 physics teachers coming up with their own animations about momentum is crazy. It's crazy. That we need to figure out a way that here are some great examples that people can use, and whether that's a subscription service that takes some of those generalized things and people just pay for them, or there's teachers that are putting those together. I think we have to figure out a way to get teachers to be able to talk more amongst each other. This is the first attempt at that, right? The small little step forward, but cross-pollinate what's working and not working. Go ahead, Stevie, and then Michael, and then John.
Yeah, one of the assignments that we've just started to work our way through right now is we have a librarian that was looking for a way to engage our students at home. And one of the projects that we used to do in building was actually using Minecraft to build, representations and models of, a book that they're reading or some product that they're working with. So we're looking at, right now bringing them in using their gaming consoles, because most of them have a gaming console when we've done our little feelers out there, or, through their PCs to play online in the massive Minecraft build off. So, giving them something new and different, that's been the big thing. I think, everyone's been mentioning this, but, going in every day and seeing the exact same thing, the model gets a little boring. So just trying to, spice it up a little bit.
I really think that one of the opportunities that's out there is Roblox. Roblox is a lot of these kids are I don't know. Again, my daughter spends a lot of time in Roblox and Minecraft, and my son does a fair bit too, but not my daughter's kind of taking that over. And I think that the interesting thing there is that the kids know it really well. The hard part is the teachers don't understand it. But Roblox has this incredible gaming system where you can build your own, it's an authoring package. So you can author things out. And like one of the examples that I was trying to think about that I've wanted to do for a while is a challenge for students where you get to fire a cannon. You're trying to hit a target, right? You only get to fire it once. So you have to figure out, we're going to teach you all about gravity. This is for kind of a physics thing, but you have to do the calculation. You don't get to just keep on firing and rotating, firing, interactively figure it out. You have to figure it out with math, of how it's going to go. And I think but figuring out games like that challenge them to actually use the math in a way that, this is just one example, but use the tools there. I think that Roblox is an incredible platform for teaching. And the reason the physics are really good in Roblox is that the guy who started Roblox used to create he created a app called Interactive Physics, and it was in my path of how I think about education. Interactive Physics was this moment where I might have told the story before, so I'll tell it one more time though. I was teaching, so ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, used to send us out as emissaries. You just want to be friends with the rest of the community. I think, it's just and it was it was a mixed with that with the George Lucas Educational Foundation. So some of us that had speaking backgrounds would get sent to schools, go show visual effects shots and get kids excited and, that kind of thing. You're kind of entertainment for the afternoon. And so I went and I had behind the scenes videos of how Men in Black, I didn't work on Men in Black, but they give you the video and they say, go out and talk about that. And so anyway, the movie I was working on, Star Wars, was still in production. So anyway, so I'm showing how Men in Black get done, and I had my laptop there, and we were showing something falling out of the movie, and it was rolling around and everything else. And while they're doing this, all the kids are just almost asleep. Like they were not interested in this at all. And I was like, oh, this is not working. And someone asked, well, how does the thing bounce off the ground if it's not real? I said, oh, that's a physics simulation. Let me show you how that works. And I popped open Interactive Physics. Now, what Interactive Physics was, I don't think it's still, it was literally just 2D. You can draw little squares and little circles and everything else, but when you hit simulate, it just simulates the reaction, the physics reactions, right? And you can give it a vector, and you can define that vector as like, this many, like it was all something you could do. And then, so I showed, like, here's what we do is we just have this thing and we hit the button and it all falls and it does it. And the kids went, like it went from like they were asleep to totally awake, and they're sitting there going, okay, do this, and suddenly they wanted to, like, and suddenly the whole thing was like this crazy thing, and it was a stupid little like circles and stuff like that. And I was showing them Men in Black, and I realized that when they were suddenly able to interact with the content, they were like totally on, and it was a simple little, I was just punching little circles around. It didn't have to be complicated. Minecraft and Roblox are relatively simple, and they're very engaged because of what they allow them to do, because they can interact with the content, and figuring out ways that they're not passively absorbing content. Passively absorbing content is devastating. Like, it is a devastating idea. Like it is, lectures are just devastating. And because you don't have any hooks yet until you've failed, until you've interacted with the content. This is like when we're talking about the cooking classes. I know I keep on coming back to that, but I'm really hungry. Anyway, but you have to engage in it. Like, I don't want to do the cooking the first time on the live event. I want to see it, play with it, learn it, knowing that I'm going to get all my questions answered later. And that knowing that interactive, and I think that's why MOOCs don't work, in my opinion, is all these videos and then there's no interaction. Like there's no live interaction where I'm going to answer all your questions. And we're going to experiment a lot with that in the computer graphics video world over the next couple months, now that I'm a little bit freer. Anyway, Michael.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the mixing it up is always good. The other thing to think about too is just, fatigue in the fall is a real thing for everyone. Most schools have a spring break, which, at least in the US, is you have that in the spring, and at the beginning you have a couple more holidays. And so I think it's just worth remembering that if you don't have a fall break built into your schedule, that this is the point where people just get tired anyway. And so one of the things that works, if you can schedule it in, is to just give everyone in class a couple days. You can do no new content. You could just do fun content. I know at Berkeley, a lot of us are, especially next week, doing either fun things or just having, just deep, sort of check-in sessions with students. And that can be a good way just to make sure that, acknowledging students that like things are going on, and that they get tired too. The other thing, in terms of checking in higher ed, that works pretty well is if you just sort your class list by some kind of attendance metric, whether that's number of assignments turned in, if you actually use the Zoom logs. It could be just taking the bottom quarter of scores, but just sending them a personal email, and saying, hey, I noticed this, what's going on? That will get a lot of response, and that will bring some students back in, because oftentimes they just don't expect you to even notice that things aren't going well.
John?
I was going to say, with this little faculty group, when you speak, you vary your voice. Sometimes you're louder, sometimes you're softer. You can't expect every class to be heavy engagement. So our faculty group got very frustrated because they got in better. The classes were more engaging. The students were connected and all once, but it wasn't happening in some of them. And the faculty members were beginning to panic. And we had to think back, if you're teaching semester after semester, some classes are more engaging than others. You need permission to realize that's going to happen.
You do, but I do think that finding some way, like we never run out of, we sometimes worry that we're going to run out of questions, but we never run out of questions here because we've trained everybody that this is a place that you ask questions, and I think that you have to, one of the things I would say is that watching my kids do their thing, and I try to stay out of the room, so I only get little clips of it. I went into this like watching the teachers all the time, it created too much stress for me. So I decided and created too much stress for them because I would give them feedback. So I stay out of it for the most part and just watch the results. But what I will say is that the less lecturing that you do and the more discussion, it's always going to be more interactive. Like I just guarantee that is the discussion is everything, and figuring out a way that you can give them videos and not make them watch you talk for more than 3 to 5 minutes at a time, ever, I think is really important. Like as a teacher. The second thing is teachers really need to pay attention. I can hear it when I go past my kids' computers. Teachers need good microphones. They need good microphones. It is horrible to inflict on my kids these echoey rooms and everything else. And we talked about it earlier, but the number one thing that every teacher should have is a Pile microphone or whatever that plugs into their computer. They have to have those. It's more important than anything else they can do in education because you are requiring the brain to do an enormous amount of filtering just to hear the information. Like that's what teachers have to get. And that's what I really thought about it this week, a little bit, or last week, listening to it as I was going past my kids in these horrible, like, I was like, I don't even understand how they can hear what they're saying, and it sounds so bad. And you're forcing these students to do it's a $15 mic. It's $15 will make a huge difference in Zoom fatigue. And that's all it is. And it's just, it is the most important tool that we need to get to teachers is just a headset. Just put a headset on, call it, and because I don't think they understand it because you don't hear them yourself. If they heard themselves, they would immediately want that mic. Sky.
Michael, my question would be, in this new environment, your analytics of giving breaks are from a in-classroom experience. And now that we're all virtual, mostly, how would you shift those numbers? Because we're already hearing about Zoom fatigue. You were talking about classroom fatigue. And do you physically send them away from screens? Is that the break?
Yeah, no. So like in my classes next week, one of them, I have a schedule where I have pre-recorded videos on Monday, and then Wednesday is a synchronous live section. Monday, I said I'm just not going to do videos next week, that they can just have that day off. And then Wednesday is just going to be a check-in, open Q&A, ask me anything style for people who want to be there. Um, and yeah, it's just letting students know partially that like you have space in your schedule such that whatever the typical cadence of the classes, you can literally just say, you don't have to think about X, Y, or Z for a few days, and just really give them the time to rest up. We did it a couple weeks ago in my other course. We said, just take the next 3 days off if you want to. If you still want to study review, office hours, TAs will be available, but there's nothing required going on. And that gave students a lot of permission to just sort of relax and could take the stress down a bit. And then when they came back, whether that was to section or to lecture, they come back a little bit more refreshed.
Lucas?
Yeah, and in higher ed, what we also sometimes tend to do is just ask them when we see there's this kind of missing engagement, sometimes in the 101 or even in the groups, and sometimes it's a problem on our side, and sometimes it's also other things, as we at least here don't always control every part of it. So they study at multiple faculties at the same time, and we don't always know their workload, for instance. So perhaps it's not that they aren't interested, but they just kind of have another course which has a huge spike in work to do or something. So sometimes it also helps to approach students on that, especially if it's just a few of them that are disengaged.
Yeah. Go ahead, John, and then Grant.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that because that is one of the things that's missing with the faculty. With our program, the faculty members knew that we had a lot of students across this, taking the same courses from us at the time. And we would in faculty meetings talk about when we had our major projects. So we really wouldn't hit our students with 3 major projects on the same week. And it's been harder to do that coordination with the virtual classes that we've had, because you're just not seeing your other faculty members in the hall. But Lucas, that happened a lot in our program, because we have certain classes that had major projects, and if they all hit on the same day, we knew about it right away.
Right. Yeah. Grant?
Yeah, I was just going to give 2 ideas. One is maximizing on the fact that they're at home and they've got lots of stuff. And so I've seen some amazing show and tells. So people literally go, you've got the next 2 minutes to go and find the most, fascinating thing that you've got or whatever, right? And people of any age will come back with remarkable little things that have little stories and whatever. And if they all get a chance to share that quickly at different times, that works really well. The second thing I'd say is working on Tony Robbins events. I know it's very, very different, but he does like 15-hour days sometimes. And the only way I think that he's able to do it and to keep people engaged is he gets everyone up and he's like pumping music and they jump around. And when your screen is filled with people that are energetic, it is contagious. And so I know teachers, they're not DJs, but if you have the right music, that you can just pump in and say, okay, everyone up for 30 seconds, and he seems to just do this in a rhythm. There'd be like 5 minutes of just, really hard hitting content, and then bang, everyone up for 30 seconds jumping around. Okay, back, and it's amazing how effective it is.
Interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Sky and then Aaron.
So John, to your point of and Grant's comment about rhythm, I'm wondering about in broadcast network, they would have what was called tent polling, and I don't need to talk to whoever political call that is. And the other concept was Michael, it completely rang. Oh, the sun came out in Seattle. That's what, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I got completely distracted. So sorry.
No worries, Aaron.
So I know Emily just put it in the chat. So I use Go Noodle a lot for elementary students. So there are videos of guided dances and workouts and breathing exercises and yoga, which tend to help them. But yesterday they really just wanted to hear Halloween music. So we did a 10-minute dance party, and anything they called out that was appropriate, I threw up. So Scooby-Doo was a huge one, the Monster Mash. So they were all just dancing all over their screens, and it helped them be more focused for the science lesson later.
That's awesome. And Aaron, I just want to compliment you on how good and how good you look and sound. You just it keeps getting better every week. It just you're putting a lot of effort into it, and it looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks amazing. Great work. Next question.
Trevor Walker of Roseman, California says, Emily talked about tablets for kindergarten students. Have folks found that to be more successful than Chromebooks for the younger students?
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
So yes and no. There's positives to both. Being able to use the iPads, they're mobile. The kids can walk around and take photos of things more easily. The apps, you can curate the amount of apps that the kids have access to, so you can clean the screen. And if you use different products, you can mirror them, so you can tell the kids where exactly to go on the screen. And it seems to be a little easier for kindergartners because they're using their parents' phone from like age 2. You see them in the like in the restaurants or walking up to TVs and trying to swipe TVs because they just see a screen and they know. So that side, it's a little easier. But and I've mentioned her website before, but Christine Pinto does GAF for Littles, and she does GAF being Google for Education. And she recently just changed it and partnered up with someone. It's called Innovation for Play, I think is the name of the website. I'll put it in the chat afterwards. But what she does is she makes it very explicit instructions for the students using Chromebooks to access different apps and how to do things. So she'll use colored tape and put it on the keys so the kids have their password, their login and their password, and the letters match different colors on their card that they use, and they practice typing in. And she puts tape on the keyboard so that the pink is A and they go to A, and she only puts their letters on their login and tape only on their login stuff. So it gets the kids in the practice. Then she goes over we're going to use Google Slides, and she'll introduce it as, okay, here's a drag and drop activity I created for you, or a storybook I created for you. By the end of her year, the stuff that her kids are able to create puts my 6th graders to shame, because they're just, the way that she introduces things and builds upon it, it becomes really, really second nature for the kids. So I think I always argue for the right tool for the right job, right? So Chromebooks are terrible for going around and taking pictures of real things in real life and showing what even if you have an app like Seesaw. But if you have the ability to use an iPad for certain activities and Chromebooks for other activities, I never advocate for one-to-one in our kindergarten classes. I rather the kindergarten classes have 6 iPads and 6 Chromebooks available before pre-COVID, obviously, so that they could, set up stations. And if they were going to do work, they could grab an iPad because that makes sense. And if they were going to build something, they could grab a Chromebook. And then there was a cart that the teachers could borrow if they needed one-to-one. So, but I think both have pros and cons. Just the definite con to the iPad is interactivity with a remote learning situation, because you cannot have the video meeting and the app running at the same time.
That's great. Next question.
Louis Herzog asks, speaking of live interaction and answering all of the questions, Mukana is still not available publicly, is it?
Not yet. We're baby steps towards that. I literally couldn't focus on it until after next week. So we're going to be looking at, one of the first things we're going to be looking at is actually Zap. So, that's the thing that we're most interested in. And then making it more available to folks. So we'll be talking to some educators have approached me about that, and I'm going to make it more formal. It's where we can get people to start testing it for us, as long as they know that it'll be slow. One programmer, Chris, is working on it. We plan to roll it out by the end of the year as a beta, and it'll only be for people that are in this group. So, we're not going to, it'll just be people in this group of a handful of educators that want to use it for things. We're going to let them play with it and give us feedback on it. It won't be a full featured tool for a little while, but I think it'll be, and then we'll see, but we're going to use a lot of your interaction to figure out what we do next with it. So yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Paul Prusakowski of Gainesville says, students who have hearing or English as a second language, is anyone using a closed caption software with a live stream for these students?
I know we've been using interpretation and captions inside of Zoom, which works remarkably well as far as that goes. If you want to use an interpreter, it's just another window for them to open up that they can, or another thing. It's super simple. It's complicated. It's finding the person to generate the content is the thing that's hard. Executing it in Zoom is the thing that's easy. The linkages inside of Zoom for captioning are a little more complicated, especially if you're at scale. So the issue right now with captions are that to do it well, you need a real captioner. Now you can get a rev.com does an automatic captioning, which is about, I would say 70% accurate, maybe. It's pretty hit and miss. This comes back down to what we have noticed with the rev.com is this comes back down to what I talked about earlier, which is the microphones. So when to do rev.com, you will go from 60% to 85 to 90% accuracy just by putting a headset mic on. It literally just, now it understands what you're saying because you're not requiring an AI bot to filter out all the stuff that's going on. I just want to back that up a little bit. There's a whole thing called respeaking. So respeaking is a technique that's used in Australia. I believe all the classes are required to have captioning. They're supposed to be, like all classes, or at least university. And that's created a huge demand for captioning in Australia. And so there's a company called AI. I don't think it was really a good idea to call it that. But anyway, that does a lot. I think it's Australian Interpretate or something like that. But they do respeaking because it's easier to ramp people up. Getting a good captioner takes years. Getting a good respeaker takes months. Now, what a respeaker is they literally listen to what you're saying and they say it again. But what they do is they say it into a Dragon, I think it's actually Dragon-based software, where it's been tuned to that speaker, and they're in a quiet booth. So they're in a quiet space, and they have they have learned to speak like this the whole time to make sure that they understand how to speak. And then there's this skill set that they have to get, which is it's basically like playing the didgeridoo. They have to breathe in words and push them out all at the same time, and they get really good at it where they can just listen and talk at the same time. And so that respeaking is but that gets back to why it works is because it's tuned, and to that person. I think that what Zoom needs to do is be able to have people who need to do that, to incorporate, maybe this is a Zap kind of thing, being able to incorporate the AI that's being used in respeaking, but just straight into the teacher's mic. So the mic goes into a Dragon software that is trained for that person, and then executes a captioning system, ties into the captioning in Zoom, so that it really is taking it from their mic and injecting that in. And if it was able to cross that between multiple speakers, it would be really, really powerful. As far as the captioning, it would get really accurate. The other problem we have is that Zoom has two different linkages. One linkage is direct, and the other linkage, it's a captioner directly interacting with Zoom in the caption options. Another one is using a service to do it, where they get a key, a key that they send out to another service. That service is almost useless. It's frustratingly bad. The way when it processes it, the way it executes the captioning is almost unreadable. And then it does all kinds of weird other things. Now the captioners like it because they don't really understand Zoom, and they're just like, I'll just send it out to somewhere else. But the direct linkage into Zoom creates perfect captions. Like we started doing it, we were like, this is amazing. Zoom is amazing. And then the next one was like horrible. And I was like, what happened? And because we're doing captions in Zoom every week. And we've done captions for years. And so we're very picky. But when you have a captioner, if you're really interested in this at a high level for schools or whatever, it's hard to scale this, but if you have a real captioner captioning directly into Zoom, it's as good as TV. Like it displays. If you use the third-party system, it's not good. Anyway, I digress. Next question.
Well, we're actually technically out of questions. I suppose you could.
Let's bring the other ones in. Let's bring all the ones in that we were stacking up.
Oh, okay. So you ready to go for that?
We're already heavy. So we'll just keep on going.
All right, let me move some of these Dolby Summit ones over.
And I will pass on some of them. I can't talk about everything in there, so we'll talk more about what the experience of it was and less about how it was made. Just to let you know, I'm not cleared to do that yet. Tony?
Yeah, Alex. I just wanted to affirm something you shared a long time ago about education, educators becoming like rock stars or NBA basketball players. And it sort of goes back to a point that Grant was making about educators not being DJs. But I think that in order to continually impact students in a way that's going to be meaningful is that the instruction is in fact going to have to be about entertaining as well as educating. And I don't want us to minimize that in terms of it being a thing where we're just looking at where they, if the students seem like they're not engaged, that that we do something at that point in time. I just want to just kind of emphasize that we need to be intentional and constantly injecting the I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. Getting it has to be, we have to move toward what you were saying in terms of the educator being the superstar entertainer.
But the way that you do that is to scale the classroom. Like that's the only way that'll happen. Like you have to scale. Like the reason that actors and athletes, you look at the contracts that actors and athletes had 100 years ago or whatever, nothing. Baseball players basically cover their costs. The reason that you get a lot of money per person is scale. And until it scales, that won't happen. You're spreading too little jam over too much bread. Emily?
I just had a quick question because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago and then we didn't really get into it. But I watched the Tiny World that you told us about on Apple. Like, how do they do that? I want to know. How do they do that?
So Plimsoll, who did it, they do a lot of National Geographic. So this is all they've done for 20, 30 years. So Apple went to the world experts of this is all they've done and everything else. And then they said, well, this is what we want to do. I'm making this up. I don't know the backstory, but I'm going to tell you what I think happened is Apple went, we want you to make the best video about wildlife ever. And Plimsoll probably can, and they know how much it costs. And Plimsoll said, well, that's going to cost all the money. And Apple said, yeah, we got all the money. We can just give you all the money to do it. And they're like, okay, well, we if you're going to let us do it, if you're going to give us all the money, we'll do it. There's a behind the scenes on, I think on either YouTube or on Apple TV, that there's a behind the scenes of showing some of those pieces. I think that what they're not showing is I do think there's some CG in there because I think some of it was impossible. Like, and maybe I'm wrong, but there was some shots there that I was like, that's not possible. Like as a visual effects artist, I just know that would be easy to do. There's a couple of those owl shots that I'm pretty sure the owl is CG. Like it is physically impossible to do that shot. Like where it's flying. And I think they use the drone. They mentioned it in the behind the scenes. They use the drone for the owl shots. I think they use the drone to capture the plates that they put the owl into, and so I think that there's and the owl they either did that or they did some processing because I didn't think the owl looked that good in some of those shots, like from a visual effects perspective. So I feel like they didn't quite nail it there. But again, when we talk about creating centralized assets for all schools to use, everything could look like that. Like when we're talking, and Apple is probably one of the few companies that could do that, and especially if they bought Disney and used all the Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar characters for the education stuff. I'm just saying, like, a guy can dream, but if they, if Apple did that, that would pretty much be the end of it. Like it would, they could build an entire curriculum and own that market, Sky.
So Tony, to your point of my concern about the teachers being the superstars, often that becomes a self-serving, and then you see the implosion of that talent because the audience's expectation is to keep feeding me. So I'm really interested in, again, Alex's statement, community is king. Content is the honey that pulls us together. And so that's where I'm pondering these concepts too. I have one more thing. And then to Emily's point, that camera didn't accidentally just happen to be there when the giraffe came over it. I'm just saying somebody had to do a lot of work to make it look that simple. And so it didn't, reality TV is not reality. But it may be TV at best.
But there's some good behind the scenes that Apple put up. I can't remember. I think it might be on YouTube. But I think that I lost it. It's something while Sky was talking. The sun came out. I know. Yeah,
it just
all right.
completely throws you off.
Next question.
Well, Chris Clark has thrown me a bone by asking me about a great support arm and lighting setup for a jack-o'-lantern. And there is one actual lesson that I think will help all the educators for this, because the actual thing was too bright and it's blown out. So I found decades ago at Harbor Freight, there's a $14 router speed control that works perfectly for incandescent sources under 100 watts. So if you need to just dial down a prop that's in the back of a shot, head for Harbor Freight and see if you can find their router controllers. Okay.
Next question.
Harbor Freight has no less than 15 different systems in their process. They're based in Ventura. I actually talked to the guy. They just kept iterating onto the top. So they've got old Macs, old PCs, old decks. It's a thing.
Okay, Perry Miller of
Bill,
Chapel.
is that on a C-stand? Bill, is that on a C-stand?
Yes, it's on a C-stand with a grip
purpose-built-
arm, and then there's a laptop tray from
So it's a
Manfrotto.
purpose-built laptop.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a Manfrotto laptop tray. I was just curious if that was something that was cobbled together or.
Yeah, it's grip gear I had in the garage. So yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
There you go. Wait a second. I should turn him up just a little tiny bit because his eyebrows aren't coming out well. All right. Let's continue.
By the way, I just want to say one thing. If anyone's doing any jack-o'-lanterns, I might try to do one tonight just for fun because I enjoy it. There's two tools that are necessary to do great jack-o'-lanterns. One is a drywall knife, a drywall saw, it gets the most, and a Dremel. It makes a big mess, but man, you can do some great stuff with a Dremel. It really takes it to a whole nother level. Anyway, next question.
I hate to say it, this one's plastic. My wife usually does a couple, but if they stay outside and it gets too hot, old pumpkin is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Perry Miller, Chapel Hill. Apple's HomePods are rumored to soon be able to employ the Atmos experience. Has anyone beta tested it? If not, any speculation as to what might be the quality of the Atmos sound?
I bet you it's going to be great. That's my guess. Is it'll be really good. They'll know what their orientation is. They have a microphone system that can analyze your room. I have a feeling that it's not going to be bad, and I think that those little ones, now make it more affordable. $100 ones to put some placement into it. It's not going to be the replacement of a true Atmos system, but I bet you it'll be halfway between an Atmos system and a discrete channel Atmos system and a soundbar. I think that it'll get halfway between the two. That's my thing. Anyone else? I haven't tested them. I haven't seen them yet, but I really like the little ones. They look cool. Anyway, next question.
Chris
TJ. Wait, TJ.
Oh,
sorry. I'm not sure that the small ones are going to work for the Atmos system, though. I remember reading, and the little tiny ones I don't think are going to work for that.
Well, I mean, great overheads. Next question.
Chris Russo at Red Hook says, at the Dolby Summit, what different types of kits were sent to the remote participants? Was it pieces and parts using the participants' own computers, or were they sent it as a complete system? We're particularly interested as to what the audio setup was and thought that they sounded great, which I thumbs up to.
I'm not going to get too much into. I want to be careful not to talk too much about the Dolby Summit yet, because I need to get some stuff cleared. I will tell you our different levels, general levels of audio pipelines. So we have a couple different ones that we use. There's two really. There's kind of the little one and the big one. The little one is we just give you a Pile mic or a Pulson mic. That's a $10, $15 mic. We run that into a USB converter that takes analog. We buy those with 1/8" jacks and run them into 1/8" to USB connections, and that's what we probably send out the most are those. Then there's the high-end system. The high-end system is this mic. This is a Countryman H6. It's the over both ears, over one ear, with speakers who know what they're doing. With an A2 that's putting them on, one ear can be really useful. You're sending them out to people who don't put mics on. A one-ear headset solution is a disaster. Like, it's just an unmitigated disaster. They're hanging out. They're doing all kinds of other stuff. We literally had to start sending them surgical tape. There was a time where we bought a bunch of. We sent surgical tape to put them right here just to keep them so they didn't have to think about it anymore. But it doesn't work. Then we run that into a mix pre with noise assist. And that's what if you hear something really clean on something that I'm working on, that's what I'm using is a mix pre. It's a Countryman headset, which I find to have better clarity than the DPA. I think the DPA has better low end response, but I don't think that improves conversation as much as having clarity. So the Countryman is a little less expensive and has better clarity. And then you run into the noise assist. The noise assist is typically at a -5. And it just kind of cleans up everything, like it's just like, and then it's all there. And then when we get it, because the quality is coming in so high, when we get it, we do a little tweaking on the EQ live on a QL1. So, because remember, we have each person, when we do ours, is coming in as an individual feed. So I've got a stem for each one of them. So I can sit there and we can tweak their EQ and their delay and everything else that's needed in real time. So that helps us a lot. But that's our general approach to all shows. Next question.
Matt Cooley of Montreal says, again about the Dolby Atmos event, the audio video quality was outstanding, congrats, but I did have an intermittent issue with the audio video sync up to several seconds. I was on a PC on Chrome, then tried Edge with the same results. It eventually settled, but any ideas what was up?
So one thing to know about all streams is the audio and the video are coming to you separately. It's absolutely required for them to come to you separately, and the reason is that otherwise the audio will break up when the video breaks up. You're losing a lot of when you lose a video frame, you don't want to lose audio frames, because you can watch broken video, like with people sliding back and forth a little bit or them skipping and everything else. Cannot listen to broken audio. People will not last very long. We've seen it happen. People hear even little clicks will drive people crazy. So we send you an audio stream, and the audio stream is much lighter, so we know that we can get it to you. So the audio stream comes to you. It's a light feed. It's probably not going to be affected. It comes in straight, and it stays in real time. The video, if you're losing frames on your end, and that can be a CPU issue, it can be a bandwidth issue. If you're losing the video can fall behind and then get ahead and then fall behind as it's trying to keep up with the audio that is remaining stable. So that's the general reason why you have that. Oftentimes refreshing the player in the browser will fix it. If it's getting permanently off, but that's usually the case for streaming in general. I used to argue, like, why are you streaming it audio and video separately? And then it was explained to me by an engineer, like at a large company, like you can't do it that way because otherwise the audio would break up. Can't keep the packets the same. So that's why you see oftentimes sync issues in live streaming. Next question.
I think this is the last Dolby one specifically. How can I get Dolby sound on a MacBook Pro or a Mac Pro without Atmos? And I wonder if they mean the Atmos app.
It depends on what year. All the 2020 Macs, and I know all the 2020 Macs and above will have Atmos built into the speakers, and they actually do a pretty good job of kind of capturing the Atmos experience, so to speak. The iPad Pros are magical. Like, I don't even understand how that works. Like, they have 4 speakers and they somehow create something that really feels like it's around you and behind you. I don't understand. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I wonder if Rajan is asking about playing back Dolby material.
Right,
Definitely definitely, and maybe not. Yeah, maybe not a
What would you
creation.
suggest?
Because if Macs generally now could, I think 2018 and above could decode Atmos internally,
Mhm.
and it could decode AC3, which is 5171. I think since the 2009 or something like that.
Mhm.
But of course, like on the machines itself, it will only play back on stereo because it only has stereo speakers. Um, but say if you hook it up to, for example, a 5.1 capable, 7.1 capable, or Atmos capable receiver, AV receiver, you have to go to audio MIDI setup and make sure, say if you're connecting it via the HDMI output, make sure it's set to I think the terminology that they use is like encoded digital audio. So it's not doing the decoding within the Mac. It's sending out the
It's
full
passing it through. So it's
encoded
taking
bit
the
stream.
EAC3
Yeah, the bit
stream.
stream, and it's sending it out to the AV receiver.
That makes sense. Tony, and then Grant.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is it only the AirPod Pros? The other AirPods won't give you
Right.
anything close to it?
Yeah, the AirPod Pros are the ones that have the directional information in it. The earlier AirPods do not. And I will say that the AirPod, with the new iOS and the AirPod Pros, if the battery lasted long, I would just leave them in all day. You know, like they're really comfortable, and they switch. I have a couple phones, and they switch. You pick it up, and it just knows which phone you're in, and it goes, "Oh, I'll just connect you to that one." And it's the last ones. I had multiple AirPods so that I had this AirPod for this phone and this AirPod for this phone because it was so messy. Now I'm just getting rid of them. Anyway, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I was just going back to that question about the multi-channel audio out of Mac. Something that's really cool if you do have an audio device that has multiple outs. So like I have an XR18, a Behringer little mixer, so it connects via USB. If you then go into your audio MIDI setup, you can actually set up the different channels. So you could do 7.1 all going out discrete channels. So you could go out 8 channels. And then if you have that, you can actually connect. And so I did a makeshift 7.1 setup with all different types of speakers. And I just kept connecting
That's
different
great.
ones, and I had a full surround. I ran a DVD or something at the time, and it worked beautifully. It worked really well. Yeah,
That's awesome. I didn't even think of that. That's amazing. Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in on your comment about iPad Pros because I had the same thing. It has changed a lot of my behavior, particularly in terms of listening to music, and particularly if I'm sitting on the couch and I'm just checking my feeds and things like that. If I see something that is interesting and I click on it and I think, oh, the sound on that is probably good, I will flip open my little case and put one in, and it'll immediately find it and connect to it. And then if I go, oh, the music is really good, I will flip it open and put the other one in and then put them away. And I found myself doing that probably 7 or 8 times a day. I would have never turned on a stereo in my living room or something like that to increase the sound quality that I'm receiving,
Right.
because it's just too much hassle. But they've done a really brilliant job with that. Detect that it's in your ear, instantly link, and feed you the quality of whatever you're watching.
And I think that we are going to see Apple push the outer envelope of quality, and I think we're just starting to see the beginning of that because it's something that's easy for them to distinguish themselves, from everybody else, and make it harder. They're spending into it. They're investing in it, and whether it's AR or surround, we are going to spend. I will warn you that we were going to spend a lot of time talking about AR and how to generate content for it. Atmos music, Atmos for content, vision, and how to do the color correction and how to push all those things. Because what I always want to do what I've wanted to do with this group, the first part of this, first 6 months of this has been accumulating the group, right? having us get into a spin. But the goal now is to get us on that, get all of us, or the people who are continue to include everyone. So that 7 to 8 hour is always including everyone, but finding opportunities to help those of us who want to be on that bleeding edge, have a lot of us being able to, because it's, as a lot of us get our heads around that bleeding edge, it means that we will learn faster. You know, because we will be the Victor example is a good example of someone who learned how to do something here and now is past us, isn't showing us. But what if there's 100 of us or 200 of us or 500 of us that are all thinking about Atmos? That'll be the largest group of people actively trading notes on Atmos in the world. So, you know, and so the thing, I mean, there's people that are doing it on Facebook, you know, whatever, but it's not the same as the speed that at which what we can do. And we'd probably track them too. So we want to, you know, have a group of us that are really figuring this out, and we'll figure out things faster than anyone else in the world because of that process, because now we have the group that can do it. So so expect me to talk a lot more about Atmos, AR, and Vision as we kind of keep moving forward, and a lot of other things that support those things. We're not going to leave the other stuff behind, but we're going to create a lot of new opportunities for that. Go ahead, Brian, and then Sky.
So what about the other side of it, the creation, producing Atmos content? I was just doing some looking, and they claim you can mix on headphones with binaural processing, but know anything about that? And then there's the software side. Looks like Fairlight within Resolve is one option. Logic is an option.
Yep.
Yep.
And again, that's what we're going to dig into. It's not so much the experience of it. We're going to dig into how to do that, and we're going to do sessions on it. Again, I'm trying to find the right people. I think I have the right person for Resolve to get us up to speed from the video perspective of how to generate vision content. And then the next step is to, you know, get into like how to generate that in Logic, how to generate that in Pro Tools, Fairlight, you know, like how do we, like we'll figure out all of those things. And, you know, because again, as a lot of us learn it and we're trading notes, you end up with an expertise internally that, you know, is,
I really want to play with this.
It's so much fun. Like, I just got to say, it's like the funnest thing I've done in a long time, you know, is playing with it. And when you get used to listening to it, that's all you want, you know, like it just becomes this. And here's the thing is that I've gone back to really enjoying, I realized that when I started moving so much in my mid 20s, I used to be a real audiophile. I had great speakers and AVRs and, you know, everything else. And I was traveling so much, I just couldn't carry it around. And then I just got to good enough. I was wearing headphones all the time and just had good enough audio. And there's something about working on this that has made me just really like, I just really want a great experience all the time. And I think that for creators, that's important that people get excited about that, because it lets you really, you know, play with it, you know. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Sky.
Yeah, in terms of creating Atmos mixes, well, they mentioned it in the keynote that, yeah, you can, well, of course, originally, it only started out that you could only produce Atmos content with Pro Tools, but now you could do it with Logic, Ableton, Pyramix, and all these different Nuendo, all these different DAWs. Essentially, like what you just need to get is the Atmos production suite, which includes the Atmos renderer, and you need to be able to. I don't know how it works with the other DAWs, but you just have to do that connection between your DAW and the Atmos renderer, both metadata connection and also the audio stream connection. And then, yeah, you could essentially mix in Atmos, and there are different monitoring modes that you can do with, you know, you can monitor in native Atmos, you can monitor in folded down 5.1, 7.1 stereo and binaural if you want to. There are different ways that you can monitor. Things only get much more expensive and complicated when you have to deliver masters for cinema and for OTT. That's where you need the RMU, which is you know, you're talking about big boy dollars there.
How much is an RMU?
Well, first of all, like you can only get an RMU if you have a Dolby Atmos certified studio. So that starts from there. It's not only about getting the hardware, it's about like building a studio that Dolby will say, like, yep, you're approved to make the Atmos mixes.
Wow. And I think that's really important in the sense that what killed 3D was bad 3D, you know. And so I think, you know, what Dolby's trying to do there is make sure that the quality is at you know, when people connect it, they connect it to something that's actually good. Sky.
Yes, and they physically send a Dolby representative to your space and certify you, and they check you out with all their acoustic sound. But I think Mickey kind of led right into my question. Let me see. I'm looking at a Mix Pre, a Countryman, Black Magic. So so Mickey, maybe I should ask you, how many Alexes is this experience going to cost me?
Sorry, what do you mean by
Well,
what does he
it's
have to
just
buy?
what experience?
Well, I can obviously give time apparently to learn this, but what's the barrier to entry financially to play in this this new area, Alex?
Well,
To master for Dolby, or just to enjoy
Well,
Dolby?
I have Resolve. So I have that. What equipment will I need to understand what Alex is going to be wanting to teach us? And Brian's
Well,
got.
first of all, I think that you need to learn the basic tools on how to make them work. So the Logic, the Resolve, the or Pro Tools or other things like that. You just need to know how they work. Like and how to edit them and so on and so forth. You don't need anything new for that. Then you need, you can do a lot with just scopes and understanding what you're looking at. Eventually, what you need is an HDR capable monitor, which can be relatively consumer monitor, and you need some way to get out to it. So like an Ultra Studio, that is capable of pushing that out. And then you're kind of in the ballpark of being able to see what you're doing. And then, for the audio, as Mickey said, I mean, for basic stuff, you could use a binaural headphone, a binaural setting and headphones to kind of get some of that. But then eventually you start testing stuff in sound bars or getting discrete speakers. And then, you don't have to get all the way there at once. It's one of those things that you can start pretty small and then kind of play from there, and what I want to do is work out a way that as we work together that I can stream, like we can do like a little thing where we all have we get to watch it. We get to watch each other's work streamed the way that you saw the summit streamed, and we can all listen to it and hear it, amongst ourselves and talk about the content. And then, figuring that experience out is something that I'm working on.
That's going to be huge. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Brian?
Oh, I was just going to say, that's why I asked about the binaural thing, because if that's enough to begin to feel what it's like to mix something like that, that's such a low bar to entry,
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Ed Willick of Valley Cottage, New York says, I just got a Brio, and in my limited testing so far, when using it with Zoom, I'm only getting 15 frames per second. I'm using it with my MacBook Pro running Mojave. In the camera settings app, it is set for NTSC 60 for anti-flicker. Anyone else experience this or have a fix?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I wonder if Ed is looking at his statistics within Zoom and what he's sending out. Because if no one is looking at him in, speaker view mode and full screen, then it won't be sending out 30 frames per second. It will just be a lower frame rate.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, just also on that, if you're in gallery view, it also is low frame rate. So what I'm looking at now is 15 frames coming back.
Yeah, you really have to get into a point-to-point with somebody at full screen to see what you're really getting. Next question.
Kent King in Charlotte says, about Mukana, it was hard to tell in the chat and the Q&A who were the panelists versus the audience. When it's an expert panel, is there a way to identify their input with an icon, company prefix, or badge next to their name?
Yeah, we'll work on that. It's a good idea. I don't have an answer for it, but yeah, it's good. It's a good point. Next question.
Sky from the panel says, a TV show has me using Skype to call into their control room. On my end, I'll be using 2 iPhone 11s. Before Monday, I need to work out what would be the best audio solution from the talents. Oh, did we do this before?
Yeah, we somehow talked about it. Maybe it was before the show. Did we talk about it before the show? Or,
yeah, it was before the show. So I thought, but we missed the other audio files. So I thought maybe there might be other ideas. I've been kind of workshopping it, but.
All right, then we'll move on to James Babbitt, who is.
Oh, go ahead, Mickey. You were going to say.
Oh.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
was just going through the question. Well, you have a mix pre. A mix pre can connect to an iOS device, and I believe a mix pre will work with Skype on an iOS device. So I think that might be.
What's the connections though between?
So just the normal Lightning to USB-A cable. It has to be the USB-A, and it goes to, just the USB-A on the side of the mix pre.
That was the answer. So I can run to my Apple store and maybe buy that.
It's a standard USB-A, just the regular USB-A
to Lightning, yeah.
to Lightning.
Lightning, copy that.
Usual iPhone charger cable.
Like what comes with all your iPhones.
Oh,
just
in
that
the
one.
past, before the iPhone 12.
Used to.
Right.
That's
Next
the
question.
answer. Thank you.
Victor from the, oh no, James Babbitt, San Diego. Has anybody used Isotope RX8? Any ideas?
Haven't upgraded to it yet.
I haven't used 8. I've used past versions and they're amazing. So 8 to me is just better. As soon as I have a project where I needed it, where I wouldn't have access to Mickey, I would probably do it. Anyway, next question.
Sure. Victor from the panel says, Mickey has insight as to what changed in Zoom that made me echo back to the group when he turned on original sound. This was in the beginning of the show today, some hours ago, but and I don't see if I think Victor's gone now.
Mm-hmm.
But Mickey, did you help him through that?
Yeah, I found out a couple of weeks ago with some update on Zoom that when you turn on original sound, it starts to take every single channel from the audio interface, not just in the past it was just channels 1 and 2. Now it takes up more channels. I think John Edison
And
wanted to.
does it sum them?
Yes, it sums them.
Nice.
I haven't figured out how it does the panning and all that yet. I haven't really dived into that, but what I ended up doing was, because I was using I think a 32 by 32 channel interface going in for a project, and I just created a loopback the audio device that only got the channels I needed to feed into.
Right, that's good. John Edelson.
I was just going to say Victor got caught in that chain. We probably should be sending letters to support.zoom.us with some ideas, because remember Victor had it where he only had channel 1 and 2, and then he had it all set up, and then he upgraded his client, and what a surprise he got.
Right. Yeah, there probably needs to be a preference of 2-channel, 2-channel or all channel. Yeah, there's a checkbox there that probably needs to be there.
But
you
it's
don't want to
great
take it
to
away.
get all the channels. It's great to do that.
Yeah.
There's times that you could do some very clever things with that.
My thought is maybe it was designed that way so that it's simpler for people, wherein it doesn't matter which input on the interface they use. It'll come through Zoom no matter what. But I don't know.
If there's ever a question, if it could be simpler for the end user, that's the direction they'll go, which sometimes makes it a little harder for us who want to have more control.
One of the challenges
nodding.
One of the challenges that we've had with Zoom, which this fixes, is the fact that you have musicians who they're coming in and talking in channels 1 and 2, but then they have other music that they wanted to push through, and they have 3 and 4, but we couldn't get to it. So by it grabbing all of that and summing the instruments in with the vocals, would make it much easier for us. So I can see why they would do that, and they just need to now know that that's the issue. Next question.
So Darren McMahon's here all the way from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He's hearing that vMix and Dante don't play well together on the same machine. He's yet to build and test my machine. But as I'm here, I thought I'd ask you guys if you had any firsthand experience if the clicks and pops issue, apparently due to vMix hitting buffer limits and resetting, has been addressed.
I don't know. I don't think we have a lot of vMix users here today. So I think that I don't know what it. Yeah, it should. I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with that.
Yeah,
go ahead, Grant.
I've used it. Yeah, I've used it a bit, but the things the go-to things that we would talk about is making sure that Dante is working perfectly first with hardware decoders, encoders, to make sure that is all right first, and then.
And that could be it. I mean, not having a hardware. If you don't have a Dante hardware component that is clocking, you're going to have all those problems. So it could be just vMix not having a hardware external clock. It can't be your computer. It cannot. Like it has to be, you have to have a piece of hardware that has a Dante chip in it that's going to clock everything together. Otherwise, I don't know if clocking is the right word for it, but that's going to sync everything together or you'll get clicking and popping. So what people are having trouble with may be less about vMix and Dante and more that they're trying to do everything off their computer. Or computers. They just can't. They need that hardware sync is super important. Next question.
Keep your eye out for Leland Best in the panel.
Yep.
Tony Mobley with the last question of the day. Do you think the new AirPod Pros are going to come out? Do you think any new AirPod Pros are going to come out before the end of the year?
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
I'm not sure, but the rumor is that Apple will be having an event in 2 weeks. You might want to wait and see if you really don't need them now.
Yeah.
This does parallel, everybody knows, the Creative Summit, which is often when Apple has in the past used it to speak to the professional video and content
that?
creator market. I think it's the 14th or 15th, but I might be wrong about that. Creative Summit, it's put on by the fine, oh
FMC.
gosh, why am I forgetting the
FMC.
name of it?
Is it FMC?
Yeah,
Future
FMC. Thank you. Future Media Concepts, the people
Future
who
Media.
did.
Jeffrey. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Grant, and then TJ, and then Tony.
Just the AirPods Pro news at the moment is that anything made before October 2020 could have crackling, and so they're doing complete exchanges for them. So they've got their hands full with a bunch of old AirPods Pro that they may do a little bit of tweaking on and then resell them.
I've actually experienced that because I think I bought them the first day they were out. I happened to be at Apple when they first came out, and I went, oh, something new. This will be fun. So I've heard a little of that. A software update ameliorated the problem a lot. It used to be at high volume levels. Only one of mine, the left one, would get a kind of a staticky crackle there. It has since gone away or been reduced substantially, and I don't listen as loud anymore that I was in those first months. But I think I'm going to get mine replaced just because of that.
Mm-hmm. TJ?
And right now in the US, a lot of stores are putting Apple AirPods Pro on sale right now for reasonable amount off.
So it sounds like with the summit coming up, with the sales, everything else, might not be, the next couple of weeks might not be the best to, but I don't think that after the summit that we'll see anything new for the rest of the year. So I think that's probably a safe time to wait for. I think we got to the end. Ran a little long.
Oh, wait, somebody came in real late with something.
Coming in late. A. Mitchell's
Coming in
got
late.
something.
Hang on. Let me push some buttons here. A. Mitchell's from Washington. Is there any info available about how people interacted with the Dolby event? Note, this would be in terms of Atmos versus web portal, chat versus Q&A usage, chat numbers accessing from the main video event numbers and stuff like that. Thanks. Is that something you could talk about? You can't even get close to that.
I can't even get close to that one. So anyway, thank you for sharing. So anyway, yeah. So thank you for asking that question. I can't touch that. So anyway, yeah. Oh, there's a little hand clapping. Yay. All right. Well, all I can say is that I really missed everybody over the last week of not being able to come in, and it's I know I'm a little fuzzy today, but it's been really great to see all of you again, and I should be back every day for quite some time. I want to thank Bill and everyone else that and Phil and everyone else that filled in and kept the whole conversing going.
Chris Fenwick, definitely.
Chris Fenwick as well. And I want to thank all the panelists for continuing the process of me making this go forward, and all the participants and attendees that came and kept it moving. It's really important for it not to be about me. It's really important that we keep on, so I think weeks like that are good in the sense that the community is taking over slowly. And so I want to keep moving that forward. I'm too selfish that I want to be here all the time. So, I love this group, and I love hanging out with you. And so, but I do think it's important that I'm going to probably start experimenting. This week was kind of an eye opener for me of how well everyone did. So I'm going to probably experiment with, probably not during the weekdays, but experiment sometimes with, as we do the handoff where I'm not necessary to start the YouTube stream and I'm not necessary to do the Zoom. We start having some days hosted by other folks so that we can kind of keep moving that forward. It's not going to be a lot. It's just going to be just here and there so that we can start picking up, making it more about the community and less about me. I'm not going anywhere, but I just want it to be more resilient, and I want to keep on building it up. So I really appreciate everybody's effort to keep that going. And anyway, I appreciate all of you. It's just I missed you all for a week, and the longest time we've been apart for the for 6 months. So anyway, it's great to be back, and we'll see a lot of you tomorrow morning. All right.
Happy Halloween,
Okay.
everybody.
All right. Happy Halloween. Take care.